So hey guys, how are you all? Welcome to the Fiction Quest. So we are back with a brand new movie on what if Naruto fell in love with Ruby Rose. But before we start, be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video. Now let's begin the story. The battlefield was barren from all the destruction that had been caused by what people considered the biggest fight in the history of shinobi. A storm had started rolling in as rain began pouring upon the land as if the havens themselves were being affected from the fight for the world. All of the shinobi alliance stood outside a barrier that had been placed by the biggest threat ever seen. Kaguya, Otsutsuki, Naruto and Sasuke had managed to break everyone free from the tree's roots by using the Uchiha's unique Rinnegan to counteract the mass genjutsu. All ninja that knew anything about barriers were attempting to break it in order to help the only two shinobi that were inside. Both Naruto and Sasuke slammed into a rock from a devastating attack from their opponent before they landed in a crouched position. The two shinobi were breathing heavily and sweating hard, both trying to figure out a way to win against this devastating enemy. Naruto gave a quick glance at Sasuke before looking at the godlike woman before slowing down his breath to calm himself. I don't believe you have any thoughts on how to beat her, do you? We're both almost out of chakra, although we have her on the ropes as well. We need something to end this. Do you have anything at all that can seal her away forever? The blonde-haired shinobi stated to his teammate. Sasuke had one eye open, which was revealing his unique Rinnegan. His mind was racing through many different thoughts. He personally didn't know of any jutsu that could seal them away, but his thoughts were interrupted. They suddenly jumped to the side as a couple of Gudadama hit the spot they were just at a split second ago. Sasuke knew they needed a trump card to win against them, but nothing came to mind for him until he remembered something that happened before he entered the battle with Naruto. You don't suppose you can talk her out of this, do you? You seem to be very good at that, Sasuke stated in a mocking tone as Naruto gave him a glare telling him to shut up. In all seriousness, I have something that stop her, but the only problem is I need all attention off of me for it to work, as well as she needs to be within at least 10 meters of me, Sasuke stated in a serious tone. Naruto smirked a bit at the comment as he immediately formulated a battle plan. If that's all you need, then I'm your guy, Tem. They don't call me the #1 unpredictable ninja for nothing, ya know. You remember our fight with Zabuza? The Uchiha gave a knowing look as Naruto threw down a smoke bomb, and the two held up a familiar hand sign for a certain shinobi in particular. Kaguya had a calm look upon her face, not showing an ounce of fear to what just had happened. In truth, she was at first playing with the two young men, although ever since releasing the other shinobi from the Tsukuyomi she had been weakened, considering chakra couldn't be taken from them anymore. She raised an eyebrow at their actions and chuckled a bit. Do you really think some smoke is going to stop me? You truly are desperate and pathetic to use such a futile tactic on someone like me, Kaguya stated in a mocking tone and jumped out of the way as two Fuma shuriken came out after her. The rabbit goddess immediately followed up by going after now visible Naruto and Sasuke. Naruto jumped forward using his immense speed from the six-paths sage technique and started sending a barrage of attacks, causing his enemy to start being pushed back. Kaguya aimed to stab him with a lance created from the Gudadama, but Naruto dodged and used the lance as leverage to place a kick to the goddess's chest and send her sliding backwards. The Jinchuriki of all the Biju attempted to follow up with a pump to the face. Kaguya stopped this immediately by using the lance to block the kick. She proceeded to use her free arm to grab Naruto by the neck and start choking him out, followed by stabbing him in his abdomen. The blonde's eyes widened in pain as he spit blood out of his mouth. The woman had a sinister smirk on her face at the look of despair on Naruto's face. You're a bigger idiot than I thought, attempting to attack me like that. Now just fall into despair as your dreams die. Now I just got to take care of one more nuisance and I can reactive the infinite Tsukuyomi. The mother of Hagoromo mocked and laughed, although her laughter stopped as Naruto started chuckling himself. Lady, word of advice, you really gotta learn not to underestimate your opponent and that I don't go down without a fight, the blonde-haired teen stated cryptically as he suddenly disappeared in a puff of smoke. Kaguya's eyes widened a bit in surprise as she felt a small spike in chakra and turned around on reaction. The split second of hesitation was all Naruto needed as he was going through the air with a sage-enhanced Rasengan laced with wind chakra. The young shinobi immediately slammed the Rasengan into the goddess's chest and started pushing it forward, grinding it into her harder before it started pushing his enemy back, albeit not like it normally did. Kaguya kept himself from spinning out of control by using a lot of chakra to plant her legs firmly on the ground, although she was still pushing back a great distance. This surprised Naruto, whom returned to his normal state, a bit as his final jutsu dissipated, and he silently cursed seeing as he used the last of his chakra. The rabbit was breathing heavily from the attack and chuckled darkly as she looked up at Naruto with one eye opening. "Nice try, but it seems you fell a little short," Kaguya mocked, although her eyes widened as she was suddenly pierced through his chest. She looked down and saw an ethereal blade coming out of her. Kaguya turned her head slowly and saw Sasuke with his Susanoo covering him with a flame-like blade coming out of the gourd. His head then turned back to Naruto as he realized what had happened. Sasuke was covering his left eye, which was now bleeding, and panting heavily. The young Uchiha gave Naruto a tiny smirk at the plan he had come up with. Naruto was personally surprised at what Sasuke did to Kaguya. He didn't know that his teammate possessed the sword of Totsuka, seeing as Itachi was the one that he knew had it. Sasuke dug the blade a little further in paranoia that she would try escaping. "That one was for calling my brother a fool," he stated simply. "The sword of Totsuka? I didn't think I'd get to lay my eyes upon it again," Kaguya stated in a calm manner. "I see what happened now. That smoke was just a distraction for you to make shadow clones, and transform a clone and yourself into those shuriken. You had me believe that they both were clones as you proceeded to throw those shuriken at me, anticipating I dodged them. In order for you to keep my mind off of those shuriken, you had your clone immediately attack me, keeping me distracted from both your intentions and your teammates. You used a second clone to throw yourself back at me with that jutsu of yours, which in turn was just a way to get me close enough to use the sword of Totsuka on me. You're much more intelligent than I gave you credit for," the rabbit goddess commented to Naruto before looking at Sasuke as her body and soul started being pulled into the unescapable jutsu. "It seems your ambitions and goals far exceed mine, which seems to have caused my downfall as well as underestimating you too. I guess the only consultation to this is that I lost to a couple of worthy opponents," the woman stated as he was completely sucked into the gourd. Sasuke immediately fell to his knees as his eyes returned to normal. He wiped his eye from the blood as Naruto started walking over. The blonde teen offered his hand to help Sasuke up, which he accepted and stood up. The barrier started slowly disappearing from the top on down. Naruto gave a laugh of relief at the fact they just won. When the barrier was gone, all the two could hear were cheers of joy and praise at the feat they both accomplished. Sakura and Kakashi were among one of the first to be at the two heroes' side, followed by the rest of the Konoha 11 and their other friends. The two heroes glanced at each other and gave knowing smirks and bumped fists before they suddenly fell backwards and passing out. Naruto and Sasuke both appeared in the world where they first met the Sage of Six Paths. They looked around before Hagoromo appeared in front of them with his neutral-like face, although if one looked closely they would see a small look of amusement as well. Naruto and Sasuke looked at each other before looking back at the sage. "Well, I knew I placed my trust in the right people to fix my mistakes that I made in the past. As an old man, I thank you for doing me this favor," the old man stated in a respectful and thankful tone as he bowed his head a bit before looking at them. Naruto put his hands behind his head as he gave a smile. "I told you the two of us could do it, although I gotta say that old Bag was by far the strongest opponent I've ever faced, which reminds me." The young blonde looked at Sasuke. "How did you use the sword of Totsuka? I thought Itachi was the one that wielded that blade." Sasuke?" the blue-eyed teen asked curiously. Sasuke looked at the loud-mouthed blonde and closed his eyes with a small smirk. "It was a parting gift from Itachi. I didn't realize it until we were fighting Kaguya, but I remember how he transplanted the fail-safe into me when I first got the Mangekyo Sharingan. He did it in a subtle way, but then again he was always one step ahead of me. It was a one-time use though, like how I had once possessed his Sharingan. It died with him, so I couldn't keep it, but using it once was more than enough. This way no one will be able to obtain that weapon and possibly figure out a way to break Kaguya out." Hagoromo gave a very light chuckle. "You two do act a lot like Asura and Indara, although have differences as well. Well, your task is done, and I will be taking the power I bestowed upon you back as well. If the world should need so, I will return it to you. The way things should be turning out, a power such as mine shouldn't be in an era of peace and could bring fear into those again like it did when my mother wielded the power. Now before I continue with what I would like to discuss, there are some people that would like to talk to you. The old man stated as he pointed behind the two. Naruto and Sasuke turned around and were surprised to see their families there. Kushina and Minato had huge grins on their faces, while Makoto had a gentle smile, and both Itachi and Fugaku had small approving smirks. Naruto had tears starting to form in his eyes as he immediately ran to both his parents and hugged them with a joyous laughter. Sasuke gave a small look of nervousness and uncertainty of what to do when he suddenly felt arms wrap around him. Sasuke looked down to see his mom hugging him. The young man hesitantly responded by hugging her and letting a couple of tears fall from his eyes. He looked at his father and brother, whom both gave nods of approval to him, to which Sasuke returned. Hagoromo gave a small smile as he watched the two teenagers catch up with their families and started debating how he would explain things to him. Naruto and Sasuke only talked for about 10 minutes to their families before the old man called them back over. They stood in front of the sage, both curious as to what he wanted to talk to them about. The two teens glanced at each other before looking back at Hagoromo, waiting for his explanation. Well, once again I give you my thanks for doing the impossible, and like I said before, there's something I'd like to discuss with the two of you, but first hold out your respective hands to me. The old man stated, and Naruto and Sasuke responded to his order. The two teens felt the power of the 6 paths leaving them, and the marks on their hands disappeared as well. Naruto looked at his hand, seeing the circle mark gone, while Sasuke just waited for the sage of 6 paths continue with what he wanted to discuss. I won't lie, what I'm about to ask is going to be hard to understand and won't be easy to do if one or both of you decide to accept this quest, you could call it. Hagoromo started explaining. First, I want you both to know that there are many different worlds that are all different, yet all the same in some way or form. Now I'm a delegate, you could say, for Kami, whom is the protector for this particular universe. There are times when one or a few chosen people are asked to go to another world because they deserve a sort of second chance, as well as their skills and talents could be helped for the greater good. I've come here to offer you two this option. You don't have to accept this, of course, but if you do, it will be a once-in-a-lifetime experience, to be honest. The hardest part is that you two will not come back to your home. Now before either of you say something, it was decided a long time ago that those that are chosen would exist in the new world as well as in their home world. This is just in case, for example, another Madara would appear here, then you'd still be here to stop it in a sense. Are there any questions you have so far before I continue? The sage of 6 paths asked the two young men. Sasuke was a little surprised by the offer at a sort of second chance to begin anew in a sense. He had regretted some of the things he'd done to his village and former friends, although his pride wouldn't allow him to admit it out loud. He ran a hand through his hair in thought and took a glance at Naruto. The blonde-haired hero had donned a serious look upon his face as he thought about what had been told to him. On one hand, he thought it would be amazing to see a new place, make new things, and maybe live a somewhat more normal life than what he had in Konoha. He did have some cons, but over time the pros outweighed them greatly. Naruto knew that he'd miss everyone greatly even if he was still here, although that caused a question to come into mind. How would it be possible for there to be two of me? I can understand a shadow clone or something else like that, but another actual individual that's exactly like me seems kinda impossible. The Jinchuriki curiously asked. The old man smiled a bit. Well, to be honest, what happens is that all of your abilities as a shinobi will be stripped from you. You will no longer have chakra or anything that like that. This happens, so the balance is kept first of all in the other you. Now it's not to say that you'll be defenseless and everything. It's known that you can't create energy, it can only be passed on. You will have traits that come from this world, for example. He gestured to Naruto. No matter what world you went to, Naruto, you'll still have that incredible life force that your family is known for. Does that about sum it up? The sage asked. Naruto nodded a bit after a couple of seconds as his mind processed what was told. Sasuke wondered if that meant he'd still have the Sharingan, but had more thoughts on his mind than that. He figured if it would be revealed in time if he still had his Kekkei Genkai or something similar to it if he decided to take the offer. The young Uchiha thought of another question that was bugging him a bit. Well, what would happen to our bodies? I mean, I know we wouldn't have chakra, but wouldn't not having a type of substance similar to chakra kill us? Also, if we are going to start a second life, would we have to be reverted to babies or something like that? I know it sounds weird, but some things could be cleared up. Sasuke explained as he stated his question. Hagoromo nodded a bit in understanding as he replied. No, all questions have valid answers for something such as this. Well, you're right, you would die if there wasn't something like chakra within your body. That's why we only send people to worlds that have similar qualities when it comes to how the body functions. The substance this world has that we're planning on sending you to is called aura. You'll have similar amounts of aura of the chakra pools that you have, except for you Naruto, seeing as you won't have any of the biju within you anyways. Now about being reduced to babies, no, that will not happen. You'll still be the same age and everything. You'll have some knowledge of your abilities, but we've arranged for you to meet someone once you're there to explain things and help train you a little bit for you to get used to your bodies. Are there any more questions? The Uchiha and Uzumaki both looked at each other before looking back at their ancestor. Can you give us a couple of minutes to think about this? It's a big decision and a lot to take in after all. Naruto asked curiously. Hagoromo gave a small nod in reply to the question as the two heroes turned towards each other. What do you think, Sasuke? Naruto asked his teammate. Sasuke was debating it for a little bit and after a few seconds he released a small sigh. I'm not sure what to think, to be honest. On one side, it's a good chance for me to make amends in a way and start a new life. The blonde Jinchuriki nodded a bit in understanding and rubbed the back of his head and looked up a bit. It would be a good way for you to start over. It would also be a great experience for me. I mean to meet new friends, see new sights, and learn new things. The list is endless, to be honest, but the only thing is that I would personally miss everyone. Even if I'm still technically here, it would honestly be nice to be seen as just a person and not thought of as a demon at one time. Naruto looked back at Sasuke after a couple of minutes with a small smile and determined look in his eye. It'll be hard, but I'm going to accept the offer. I believe it's enough for me to know that I'll still be here to help and protect them. If someone needs help, and I know I can do something about it, then I won't hesitate. Naruto stated confidently. Sasuke gave a small smirk and looked at the sage. Guess that makes two of us then. We both accept your offer. Sasuke turned towards both his parents and Naruto's. I guess this is goodbye until next time then. Geez. You make it seem like it will take forever for you to see your family and for Naruto to see us again, Sasuke. You can be just as bad as your father, it seems, ya know. Kushina stated with a roll of her eyes, while Makoto giggled at both Fugaku and Sasuke's glare they gave her. Minato face-palmed a bit, albeit with a smile on his face. The Sage of Six Paths smiled warmly and nodded a bit as Sasuke and Naruto looked back at him. Stick your hands out like when I first bestowed my power upon you. This will probably hurt a bit, so be prepared. You won't only be going to a different world, but your body will be stripped of its chakra and replaced with aura after all. Naruto and Sasuke nodded and held out their respective hands and closed their eyes. Hagoromo stretched out his hands as well and closed his hands as he started concentrating. The two shinobi were enveloped in a glowing white light before they looked at their families again. I hope I get to see you again real soon, Mom and Dad. Naruto stated with a warm smile upon his face, to which Sasuke nodded in agreement as they both disappeared in a flash of light. Kushina looked at Hagoromo and put her hands on her hips. So, did you forget to mention the little surprise that was waiting for them for taking the offer once they arrived there? She asked in a somewhat suspicious tone. Hagoromo raised an eyebrow. I have no idea what you're talking about. I simply figured it would be a nice little surprise after all. He stated with an ever so slightly present smirk. Kushina crossed her arms and tilted her head a bit. I guess that's where the Senju and Uzumaki's joking personality comes from after all. The redhead mockingly stated. To Naruto and Sasuke in Remnant. Naruto and Sasuke both felt like they were moving nowhere, seeing as everywhere they looked there was nothing but darkness. They had already dealt with the pain of their body altering to the changes it would have to go through. Now they were just aimlessly floating. Naruto was about to break the silence when a light appeared in the distance and started nearing them. Once it reached them, the two young men were thrust forward, sliding against what felt like the ground. Naruto was the first one to pick himself up the ground, slowly feeling sore from what just happened as he looked around. They were currently in a forest of some kind, although the flora had differences in them compared to the forest that he knew of. Sasuke stood up and brushed off some dust of his pants and took a look around as well. It was different than what he knew of, but a part of him was skeptical if they really were in a new world. "So I guess we're here. Everything does look different," Naruto commented and closed his eyes and forming a hand sign to focus his chakra, but opened his eyes after a couple of seconds with slightly wide eyes. "And I can't feel my chakra or any of the Biju at all. Sasuke, I believe we're in a new world after all," the blonde teen stated in surprise. Sasuke had tried seeing if he had any chakra as well and even tried activating his Sharingan, but nothing happened. He was about to comment on that, but the leaves started rustling and both responded by one pulling out a kunai and the other his Chikudo and got in defensive positions when a rabbit came out of the bushes and ran past them. Naruto and Sasuke turned and watched the retreating rabbit as they relaxed a bit when something was flying through the air. In response, the two former shinobi jumped forward and turned around to see a stinger placed in the ground connected a Death Stalker. "That's a large evil-looking scorpion creature. What the hell is that? It's not even close to normal," Naruto commented as he dodged another attack by the surprisingly fast creature. Sasuke kept silent as he sidestepped an attack from the claw and followed up by rushing for the tail to cut it off. The Uchiha had his weapon in a reverse grip and swung, but his eyes widened in surprise as his sword suddenly broke and shattered from the impact. He jumped off the scorpion-like creature's body and landed next to Naruto as he tossed his sword away to the side seeing as it was useless now. "That armor is a lot tougher than it looks. We just had to fight an enemy when we don't have any chakra to fight back and I highly doubt your kunai is going to do anything to him if my sword was literally shattered upon impact," Sasuke grimly stated as they eyed the creature, whom seemed to be watching the two and see what they would do next. It seemed to have noticed they were weak prey and in turn reacted upon that. Naruto groaned in frustration. "Why does this kinda crap always happen at the worst of times to me?" The blonde teen grumbled under his breath as the Death Stalker came in close for another strike. A small cloud of dust rose into the air from where the Death Stalker had struck. Naruto had cartwheeled to the side in order to avoid that hit, which was directed for him, before jumping back and standing next to Sasuke. The two were breathing a little heavily mainly because they were both still weakened from what just happened, yet still strong enough to put up a fight. "Hey genius, you got any plans? I'm more than willing to hear anything you have at this moment considering our situation," Naruto stated with a slight annoyed tone in his voice. Sasuke just rolled his eyes a bit as he watched the Death Stalker attempting to pull its stinger out of the ground. It was obvious by the way that it was struggling that the creature had immense strength. It also displayed great speed for something that had a fairly large size along with the scars that it held showed the Grim was a seasoned fighter. This didn't bode well for either of the two, especially since Sasuke knew himself or Naruto weren't at full strength plus they had no chakra. The young Uchiha would have reached for the seal that stored weapons under his arm warmers, but that was pointless. Sasuke's eyes widened a bit as he looked at Naruto coming up with a quick little idea as the Death Stalker finally freed itself. "Naruto, toss me an explosive kunai now," Sasuke commanded to his rival. Naruto gave a slight glare at the command, but followed nonetheless. He pulled out the explosive kunai from his pouch and threw it at Sasuke with practiced aim. The black-haired teen easily caught it and threw it at the scorpion-like creature. The explosive kunai embedded into the ground right in front of the Death Stalker. The giant creature didn't bother paying attention, although stopped for a second right in front of the kunai. The explosive tag ignited and began sizzling right before the explosion occurred. The Death Stalker moved back a bit from the blast, which caused both Sasuke and Naruto to smirk a bit upon the results. It took a couple of seconds for the Grim to recover before it began attempting to attack once more. The two young men both got in their respective fight stance waiting to attack or counter-attack. "I have 4 more of those explosive kunai, Sasuke," Naruto stated as he pulled a couple out and tossed them to Sasuke. "We better make them count. I doubt these things will actually kill it, but maybe we can cause it to think twice about trying to make us its next meal," the former Jinchuriki said as he explained his thoughts. Sasuke gave a small reply in agreement, while calculating any possibilities that would give them the upper hand. He had to admit that Naruto's idea was pretty impressive and had to begrudgingly give him credit for coming up with that idea. It seemed Naruto had matured in more ways than others when the situation called for it, then again he should have expected that from Naruto. The Death Stalker growled a bit from the attack and charged at the two. When the Grim was upon them, it swung its claws at Sasuke aiming to crush him with its pincers. The Uchiha responded by diving through the pincers right before it closed on him, although he didn't expect the Death Stalker to follow up. The creature swung its tail attempting to stab Sasuke, but he twisted his body enough to avoid being impaled. This didn't prevent him from injury seeing as it managed to leave a decent flesh wound across his chest, although nothing lethal. Sasuke recovered by using his hands to push off the ground and land on his feet. The young man gave a small grimace of pain as he put his hand to his chest feeling the blood on it. Naruto, this creature is a lot more intelligent than what we gave it credit. We're going to have to be more cautious seeing as we're not at full strength and are pretty much weaponless. Sasuke exclaimed to the loud-mouthed blood. Naruto sidestepped another attack from the stinger, but could feel himself slowly getting weaker from everything. A thin cut appeared on his cheek and blood slowly poured out of the small wound. I can obviously see that, you idiot, Naruto retorted to Sasuke. The Death Stalker continued its assault on Naruto, whom hit his back against a tree from continuously dodging the being. The Grim saw its opportunity and launched its tail at Naruto's chest, but Naruto ducked at the last second. The stinger had deeply embedded itself causing the tree to shake a bit and a couple of older branches to fall onto the ground. Sasuke rushed towards it in order to follow up on the attack. The Grim was furious as it attempted to free its stinger and could hear Sasuke coming up on it. A decent-sized branch smashed onto the Grim's face alarming it as well as slightly stunning it seeing as how the wood shattered on its. Naruto jumped back as Sasuke threw an explosive kunai with pinpoint accuracy. The projectile was embedded to the more exposed black exoskeleton. It blew up a few seconds later causing the Death Stalker to yell out in pain as well as releasing its tail from the tree. Naruto landed right next to Sasuke and waited to see what the creature would do. "Ha, take that, you piece of crap." Naruto gloated at what just happened. Sasuke glared at Naruto. "What the hell gave you the idea to hit that thing with a pathetic branch? Are you that stupid?" He yelled a bit at Naruto. Naruto just scoffed a bit. "Whatever, Sasuke, that stupid idea as you say actually stunned it enough for you to do your thing. You're just mad that you didn't think of it, idiot." Sasuke growled a bit at the retort, but let it go for the time being since the Death Stalker had recovered and seemed a lot more pissed than usual. Naruto could see the bloodlust in its eyes that was being held for both him and Sasuke. Sasuke wielded the last explosive kunai ready to attack the weak point they discovered. Naruto gestured to Sasuke to hand over the kunai, which caused Sasuke to raise an eyebrow in question. He gave a slight nod as he tossed the weapon to Naruto. The blonde teen caught it and put it between his teeth while wielding the other two in his hands. Naruto gave a slight gesture to the Death Stalker, and Sasuke understood what Naruto planned to do. The two rushed at the Death Stalker, which surprised it, but it advanced nonetheless. Sasuke got in front of Naruto to keep the creature distracted enough. The Scorpion Grim launched its tail, but the two moved to opposite sides and dodged it. They continued their charge to beat the impressive being. Sasuke jumped and landed on the Death Stalker's face causing it to try and shake him off, since it didn't want to pierce itself. The raven-haired young man ran up the length of its body before jumping off. Naruto had used this distraction and slid under the Death Stalker going for the underside. He plunged an explosive kunai near the Grim's head, middle, and grabbed the remaining projectile from his mouth before embedding it towards the end of the creature. Naruto got back up on his legs and jumped forward following Sasuke's lead. The pair landed near a tree that was a decent distance away and turned around. The Death Stalker turned towards them to attack the two once more, but the explosive tags went off causing a pretty big explosion. The Grim let out a noise of pain and agony. Naruto and Sasuke covered their eyes with their arms from the dust and debris that went past them. As the dust cleared, they kept a defensive stance and hoped the creature was dead. Their faces were of a negative response as the Death Stalker was still alive, and both prepared for the next attack. It gave a growling noise, but you could hear a pained tone to it. The being of darkness turned around and started retreating seeing as its prey was too much of a hassle. It was obvious that the Grim was pretty injured, but Sasuke figured it wasn't a mortal injury. Naruto let out a sigh of relief as he fell backward to the ground and leaned against the tree. Man, that was a close one. I'm kinda surprised it actually decided to retreat, but I'm not complaining either. He turned to Sasuke and titled his head a bit. What do we do now? He asked curiously. Sasuke was relieved that they won the battle, but his face had a neutral expression. We find civilization. I think there may have been a mishap when we were transported here. The Sage of Six Paths told us that someone would come here and explain everything to us. I'm beginning to think that we weren't meant to end up in this forest. He simply stated. Naruto was about to answer, but someone beat him to the punch. Well, you are partially correct, but not entirely. A mysterious voice replied. Naruto and Sasuke turned towards the direction of the voice to see a couple of people walk out of the bushes. One was a middle-aged-looking man with gray tousled hair and thin brown eyes. He was wearing shaded spectacles and a dark green scarf with a small purple emblem, which was cross-shaped. The man donned an unzipped black suit over a black buttoned vest, with a green undershirt underneath along with black trouser shoes and long, dark green pants. The other one was an attractive woman, whom looked to be middle-aged. She had light blonde hair tied back in a bun with a curl hanging down the right side of her face. The woman was wearing white long-sleeved suit that exposed part of her chest, and puffy sleeves that tightened near the wrist before spreading back out near her hands along with a tattered cape, which was black on the outside and purple on the inside, and the lower body had a black business-like skirt with buttons running in a vertical line up the front of it and lighter black-brown stockings. Hello, I'm Professor Ozpin and this is Glinda Goodwitch. I am the headmaster at Beacon Academy, which is a place where we train hunters and huntresses. You two must be Naruto Uzumaki and Sasuke Uchiha, I presume. The professor calmly asked, which Naruto nodded a bit in response, but you could see they were being cautious. Well then, I guess I have some explaining to do. If you don't mind following me, I'll explain everything once we're in a more suitable place to talk. Ozpin explained. Naruto stood up showing his silent agreement, while Sasuke kept quiet. The two silently followed the professor and the woman. Sasuke was contemplating if these two could really be trusted. The only problem was that they didn't know anything or anyone in this world, so they didn't really have a choice in the matter. After a couple of minutes of walking, the tree line broke a little bit, showing an open match of land with a strange vehicle neither of them had ever seen before. Professor Ozpin and Glinda both stepped onto the bullhead. Naruto stared at it for a bit confused, yet intrigued by the technology. It was obviously way more advanced than what they had in the elemental nations. After a couple of seconds of admiring the aircraft, Naruto got onto the new vehicle, and Sasuke followed after. Professor Ozpin turned towards them giving an ever so slight smile. I suggest you hold on. From what I've heard, you didn't have something like this back at home. He stated, simply causing both the pair to be surprised that he knew about their home. Ozpin looked at the pilot and gave a small nod. All right, take us to Beacon Academy. The pilot nodded and started up the bullhead, which started to rise up into the air. The two former shinobi were caught off guard at what was happening and both subconsciously held onto a couple of straps that were attached to the ceiling. Ozpin chuckled lightly at this, while Glinda rolled her eyes slightly. As the ride continued, Naruto had ended up watching the outside world as they fly past the new world, while Sasuke took the liberty of sitting in a seat with his arms crossed and eyes closed. In the distance, a large structure could be seen and Naruto titled his head a bit. He assumed this was the Beacon Academy that was mentioned beforehand. The structure was definitely new to him, and it was a lot larger than what he expected. A part of him was ready to go explore that whole place, but the last thing he wanted was to hear it from his best friend. The bullhead started slowing down and eventually hovered over a helipad. It started descending slowly before it landed on the pad. Sasuke had stood up and prepared to get off of the vehicle. The pilot turned off the aircraft as Ozpin and Glinda both stepped out, followed by Sasuke and Naruto. They were currently located on a roof of the academy, which was close to the headmaster's office. Upon arriving, Ozpin turned towards the two and gestured inside. We'll talk in my office here, and you can ask any questions you want. I must also warn you that I do have guest in here as well waiting to see you, so go on right in. He calmly commanded. The two former shinobi glanced at each other with small looks of confusion, before Naruto decided to go first and open the door. When they both were inside the office, they had looks of surprises once again. Naruto thought he was just seeing things, and pinched himself hard in the process. The blonde teen's face donned a huge grin as both his and Sasuke's family were conversing. Both of the families turned towards the door when they heard it open, and gave pretty much the same expression when they met them with Hagoromo, albeit Itachi and Fugaku had smirks of amusement at Sasuke's expression. "I told you we'd see you soon too you. What did you think I meant that we'd only see you again once you died Naruto?" Kushina jokingly stated to both of the teens. Naruto rubbed his hands in his hair furiously while replying in a confused manner. "I'm so confused right now Yano. How the heck are all of you even here anyways? I mean I can understand talking to you at certain times, but for you to be here in the flesh is weird." Minato chuckled lightly as Makoto spoke up. "It's actually pretty simple, Naruto. You two were given a second chance at a life you didn't have. That life happened to be with your family. Hagoromo and Kami decided that you both earned at least the right to be with your family, so it was decided that we'd be with you as well. We were previously dead already, so it wasn't much hassle to be in Remnant." The mother of Sasuke stated in a gentle smile and tone on her face. Naruto put his hands behind his head, while tilting it a bit. "Sasuke, your mom is a lot nicer than you. You probably should take some lessons from her Yano," he mockingly said while looking at Sasuke, whom was glaring at him. Naruto sighed a bit in relief, while Sasuke crossed his arms a bit. "Well, what will all of you be doing then?" he asked, indicating at the fact that the two of them were tasked by Hagoromo with helping this world. He didn't say anything about their parents. Professor Ozpin walked to his desk and took a seat in his chair. "It's fairly simple really Sasuke. You see they will be working around Beacon Academy for a different amount of reasons. I understand they all have things they're good at, so I made them an offer. If they work here at the academy they'll be able to be around the two of you more often than what majority of students see their parents. I think that's a fair trade seeing as you two came to a new world to help, and you lost out on the years of seeing your family. Kushina will be an assistant nurse, considering it seems she has an aura that's capable of healing others, while Minato and Fugaku are both going to be a part of the council around here. Makoto will be a guidance counselor for the kids in different things, and finally Itachi will help with the security around here," he calmly stated with a small smile. "Now before you ask question, the two of you will be attending Beacon Academy. The new year will be starting pretty soon, and as such it will be a good time for you two to enter. You both will attend the initiation, so I can really monitor your skills, and that's all I'll say about that for now. Now the two of you will be a sort of exception to the normal rules when it comes to certain things, but I'll explain that in the future. Now I will talk about general information that you need to know," the white-haired man explained. "First, I'm sure you both were told that we have aura within our bodies. It's basically the manifestation of one's soul. We can utilize this to aid us in battle and fight the darkness as well as provide support for yourself and allies. One of your main enemies of darkness are the Grim, which is what you fought in the forest. That one in particular is called a Death Stalker. There are many others, and I'll give you a little something to read about the ones we know of because it's imperative that you know about them. Grim do not have souls, since like I said they're creatures of the darkness. Hunters used aura and dust, which is a source of energy that can be used as a weapon in different forms, to combat these beings," Ozpin stated as he waited for the information to sink in before continuing. "Your aura can be used in many different ways, but I'll leave you to figure that out for yourselves. After all, this is what the academy is for. Now going deeper into auras, there's a thing called semblance. Semblance is basically the manifestation of one's innate and personal power as an ability unique to each individual, with the effects varying greatly from user to user. There are instances where one person can have a similar ability as another one, but there are also ones that are only unique to a certain individual or their family. Sasuke, you and your family are a good example of this. I'm pretty sure that you'll be able to unlock a similar thing to what your family referred to as the Sharingan. I'm not entirely sure of this, considering you yourself have to figure out this ability. Now as hunters slay monsters, which are the Grim generally, and basically are warriors that uphold the peace of the world as their duty. They're kind of like a shinobi from what I understand, but don't expect Grim to be your only opponents. There are plenty of people who would attempt to live a more criminalistic life. I believe that's all I pretty much need to explain for the moment. The headmaster finished as he stood up from his chair and walked over to Naruto and Sasuke. Now step forward, so I can unlock your aura. It shouldn't be too hard considering it is like the chakra you had back in your former world. I'll just need you to concentrate and find that energy that's wanting to come out. Professor Ozpin stated. Naruto stepped forward and waited to have his aura unlocked. Sasuke studied Ozpin a bit before stepping forward as well. The professor gave a small nod as he placed a hand on each of their heads and closed his eyes. Naruto and Sasuke closed their eyes as well and both began searching within themselves for the aura that was within them. It didn't take long until they both were outlined in their respective aura. Naruto opened his eyes and looked at his hand, seeing there was a faint orange glow coming off on him. When he turned to Sasuke, there was a faint violet glow surrounding him. Sasuke clenched his fist a bit, feeling more like his normal self as the colored glow disappeared from both. Well, you two are definitely something else. You both have a very incredible amount of aura. It's pretty rare to have as much as you have, but then again I shouldn't be surprised. It seems you have more than Sasuke, Naruto. Yours is more wild and unpredictable, while Sasuke's is more calm and refined. Things will certainly be interesting with you two here. I wonder if both of your auras will have some uniqueness to them because you come from another world. Now I'm going to have Glinda take you to the city of Vale to acquire more appropriate attire, considering your current ones would make people suspicious of you, plus they're pretty battle-worn, as well as get some temporary weapons. I recommend you to find someone to make you custom weapons to call your own when the time comes. I have some things that I still need to talk about with your family. Professor Ozpin explained simply. The two gave small nods of acknowledgement as Naruto went over to hug his mother and wave bye to his dad. Sasuke simply gave a small nod to them, but Makoto walked over and gave him a hug as well before returning to the side of her husband. Sasuke was still surprised and slightly uncomfortable with being hugged out of nowhere, but didn't say anything. If you would please follow me back to the bullhead, we'll head to our destination. The green-eyed woman commanded as she walked out of the room, soon followed by Naruto and Sasuke. As the bullhead took off, the duo were sitting in a seat opposite of each other as they thought about everything that was told from them. Naruto looked at his hand for a bit and concentrated the same feeling the aura gave him, and his hand responded by starting to glow orange faintly before it disappeared after a couple of seconds. He leaned back and put his hands behind his head with a big smile on his face. Well, gotta admit, getting orange as my aura color is pretty sweet. This is turning out to be a pretty interesting place. It reminds me of home a bit as well. I wonder how everyone is doing now that I think about it. Naruto wondered out loud with a slight depressed tone laced in his voice. Sasuke just rolled his eyes a bit at the last comment. What does it matter? You're still there to be a hero to them. You made your choice to come, so you may as well move forward, idiot. The Uchiha scolded at Naruto. Yay, I guess you're right. I may as well make the best of this then, the former Jinchuriki stated with a sigh. Minutes passed by as they came upon the city of Vale. The bullhead landed on a helipad, before the passengers got off of the vehicle. Naruto and Sasuke looked around both in amusement at the structures of the place as well as the technology that was so foreign to them. Glinda cleared her throat, gesturing them to follow her to their destination. Naruto shrugged a bit as they both followed the middle-aged woman. The area was that of the middle class of the city, shown by the decent accommodations. The former shinobi both were looking around, albeit Sasuke was more discreet about it, taking in the new sights as well as people, some of whom were giving Sasuke and Naruto weird looks. Naruto gave small childish glares at the people who kept looking at them, while Sasuke and Glinda rolled their eyes at his antics. The trio soon reached a clothing store that seemed to hold some of the better quality fabrics within the middle district. It held different types of clothing for different preferences. Naruto was immediately about to go find something having to do with orange, but Glinda used her dust crop to almost slap the blonde teen on the wrist. Wait 1 second, young man. I suggest you both find something comfy, yet dependable. I also won't allow you to wear something pathetic looking, the green-eyed woman stated while giving a slight glare at Naruto. Geez, what does everyone have against orange? My outfit isn't that bad looking, ya know. Naruto mumbled under his breath before he walked off. Sasuke just sighed a bit as he begrudgingly went to go find a new outfit to replace his old one. Sasuke found something that piqued his interest, and went into the back to change into the clothes. When he came out he looked at himself, finding it to be decent enough. The Uchiha was wearing a dark purple high-collared short-sleeve shirt with a zipper, which was open, going to his elbow, along with a plain black t-shirt under it. He wore dark green pants with some white bandages wrapped around his left arm, plus a shuriken holster strapped in the middle of the bandages, and black combat-like boots. Naruto came out of another changing room a couple of minutes later wearing the clothing he had found. The blonde naturally found something orange to wear, considering no matter what anyone said he loved the color. He donned a regular dark blue t-shirt under a burnt orange sleeveless hoodie, which was zipped up. Naruto wore slightly baggy green cargo pants, still with his weapon pouch attached to his hip, as well as his black shinobi sandals. The only other thing Naruto was wearing were dark blue wristbands on each wrist. His bangs hung down over his face, since his hiteate was off and in one of his pockets. "Whoa, sweet, this outfit is awesome," Naruto exclaimed while looking at himself in the mirror. Glinda sighed a bit at Naruto's choice. "I'm guessing I should have seen this coming. I guess the only consolation is that you're wearing less orange anyways. Let's head to the weapon store. I'm not sure what your preferences are, but the store here has a multitude of choices. The two of you shouldn't forget that these weapons will only be temporary until you find someone to create custom weapons for you," she commented as she paid the amount owed before leaving the store. Naruto happily followed Glinda with his hands behind his head in triumph, while Sasuke put his hands in his pockets and followed behind the two. Naruto noticed a young woman in a red hood, which was up, walking into a store call from dusk till dawn. He didn't pay much attention, seeing as it was no one he knew. The three walked into the weapon store right across the street. It held a lot of different weapons like Glinda said. There were swords, daggers, staves, maces, and a bunch of other weapons, some of which they'd never seen before. Sasuke looked around, already knowing what he wanted. He immediately found a chakudo that closely resembled his old one, albeit had a dark blue scabbard and matching hilt instead. He gave it a few practice swings before sliding it back into the sheath with a small smirk of satisfaction upon his face. Naruto was having trouble looking for something that would suit or interest him. The young blonde was studying a couple of different weapons like trench knives, bow staffs, katanas, but his eyes rested on a pair of weapons that caught his eye. He walked over to the set of weapons. Naruto picked up a wakizashi, which had a 22-inch silver blade and 8-inch handle. It had a gold circular guard with dark red wrappings on the handle. The set interested him because a wakizashi was usually wielded with a katana of some sort. This weapon set was a pair of twin wakizashis, which is kind of a rare thing to happen back at home. Naruto held both swords in his hand before switching them to a reverse grip and testing out the weight and balance of it. A grin grew on his face as he liked the feel of the twin swords. Naruto walked over to the counter where Sasuke and Glinda were already waiting for him. The green-eyed teacher paid for the weapons, but everyone in the store turned to the windows after hearing a loud shattering of glass coming from the store from dusk until dawn. Naruto saw the girl with the rude hood, which was down now, standing outside and looking towards the ground. He also noticed some guy in a suit knocked out a few feet away from the red-haired girl. Naruto's blue eyes widened a bit when the item she held in her hand, while leaning on her shoulder, transformed into a scythe as she looked towards the broken window, which had shady-looking people looking outside it, with a small smirk upon her face. She then proceeded to twirl the red scythe around herself with amazing skill before embedding it into the ground. Ruby had just gotten out of Signal Academy for the day. It was one of the later classes she had, so it was later in the afternoon. The sun had already begun setting at this time of day. The red-hooded girl waved goodbye to a couple of friends before turning towards the direction she had intended to go. Her parents didn't really expect her home till around 9, so she had a couple of hours to kill before heading home. Her destination was the store, from dusk till dawn, which wasn't that far from where she lived anyways. Ruby put her headphones on and started playing some music. She proceeded to put her hood up as she walked towards her destination. Legends, stories scattered through time. Mankind has grown quite fond for accounting the exploits of heroes and villains, forgetting so easily that we are remnants, byproducts, of a forgotten past. A mysterious female voice started talking, although couldn't be heard by anyone. Man, born from dust, was strong, wise, and resourceful, but he was born into an unforgiving world. An inevitable darkness, creatures of darkness, the creatures of Grimm set their sights on Ma and all his creations. These forces clashed, and it seemed the darkness was intent on returning man's brief existence to the void. The feminine voice continued. Ruby looked up at the sky, seeing the partially destroyed moon for a couple of seconds as her mind wandered with different thoughts. The red-haired young woman looked forward as she crossed a street, and could see from dusk until dawn in the distance. The girl in the red hood also noticed a couple of teenage boys leaving a clothing store before following a blonde-haired woman into a weapons store. Her love of weapons peaked for a bit before she shook it off and continued towards her intended store. However, even the smallest spark of hope is enough to ignite change, and in time man's passion, resourcefulness, and ingenuity led them to the tools that would help even the odds. This power was appropriately named dust. Nature's wrath in hand, man lit their way through the darkness, and in the shadow's absence came strength, civilization, and most importantly life. But even the most brilliant lights eventually flicker and die, and when they are gone, darkness will return. A nicely dressed man with dark green eyes, bright orange hair, which was covering his right eye with long bangs, walked up an alley with a cigar in his mouth as well as some of his henchmen behind him. He stopped for a bit, inhaling his cigar a bit before blowing out the smoke from his mouth and releasing a light grunt. They all proceeded to walk down the street, while people cowered in fear of them all. So you may prepare your guardians, build your monuments to a so-called free world, but take heed. There will be no victory in strength. The voice finished in a warning tone. But perhaps victory is in the simpler things that you've forgotten. Things that require a smaller, more honest soul. A mysterious masculine voice calmly retorted as Roman and his henchmen walked into the store. The orange-haired man walked up to the store clerk and pulled his cigar out of his mouth, shaking it a bit before crossing his arms. Do you have any idea how hard it is to find a dust shop open this late? Roman asked in an almost rhetorical manner. Please, just take my lien and leave. The clerk pleaded as he put his hands up when a thug aimed a gun at his face. Shish shish shish, calm down, we're not here for your money. Roman calmly explained before looking at one of his henchmen. Grab the dust, he ordered. The henchmen went to work as they opened cases, pulling out cylinders and walking over to the tubes that contained dust. They began filling up the cylinders as another thug opened up another case. He demanded firm and uncut crystals, to which the clerk complied. A lone grunt was about to fill up a cylinder with dust, when he heard some rock music and looked towards the direction it was coming. All right, kid, put your hands where I can see them, he commanded as he pulled out his red blade. The girl didn't respond, to which he scowled a bit. Hey, I said hands in the air, he ordered once again. You got a death wish or something? The man asked as he walked over and put his hand on the red-hooded girl's shoulder. Huh, Ruby asked as she felt something on her shoulder, causing her hood to fall back down as she looked at what touched her. Yes, she asked as he pointed to her headphones, before she took them off. I said put your hands in the air now, the man ordered once again. Are you robbing me? Ruby curiously asked. Yes, the henchman exclaimed with a slight annoyed tone. Oh, the hooded girl stated with a slight smirk. The man went flying back as Ruby hit him, causing Roman to look at him for a bit before looking at another one. The second grunt ran over to where Ruby was and pointed his gun at her, ordering her to freeze before she reacted by jump kicking him outside, effectively breaking the glass window. Naruto and the rest of the group had looked towards the window before walking outside to see what the commotion was. Naruto saw the girl with the rude hood, which was down now, standing outside and looking towards the ground. He also noticed some guy in a suit knocked out a few feet away from the red-haired girl. Naruto's blue eyes widened a bit when the item she held in her hand, while leaning on her shoulder, transformed into a scythe as she looked towards the broken window, which had shady-looking people looking outside it, with a small smirk upon her face. She then proceeded to twirl the red scythe around herself with amazing skill before embedding it into the ground. Ruby held her headphones in her other hand before turning them off. Okay, Roman stated in a somewhat confused tone, while looking at the rest of his grunts. Get her, he ordered with a gesture of his head. The henchmen ran outside the window with their weapons drawn, going after Ruby. She jumped up and used her scythe as leverage to spin around a couple of times before planting both feet into a thug's face. She jumped the momentum to jump forward with her weapon now holding it behind her. The young girl noticed an enemy behind her, so she pressed the trigger on the handle causing a bullet to come out. The force allowed her to spin around before slamming the back of the scythe into another grunt's face, followed with bringing it down onto another grunt, which caused them to be forced to the ground. A rifleman aimed to shoot Ruby up, but she reacted by using the force behind her weapon's bullets to effectively dodge the attack before using the same method to close the distance and sliding into the gunman. The grunt was knocked into the air, and suddenly hit by Ruby, whom had embedded her weapon into the ground in order to shoot herself into the air using the momentum from her previous move, into the ground. "You were worth every cent, truly you were," Roman mocked as he took out his cigar and stomped it out with his cane. "Well, Red, I think we can all say it's been an eventful evening, and as much as I'd love to stick around, I'm afraid this is where we part ways," he stated as he aimed the end of his cane at her, causing a crosshair to pop up before shooting a missile at her. Ruby immediately reacted by aiming her scythe to the ground before firing in order to shoot herself into the air. She flipped in the air before landing on the ground and started looking around. Ruby looked behind her and up, noticing Roman climbing up a ladder to escape. The store clerk walked up the entrance and used it as support to stand up. "You okay if I go after him?" Ruby asked the elderly man, which he approved of, before going after Roman. Naruto was immediately impressed with the girl's skill with the scythe. She used her small frame and agility to beat her opponents with ease, although he wondered how she moved so fast with that weapon as well. Glinda had narrowed her eyes at the scene. It was dangerous on what the girl was doing, especially when she noticed who the white-coated man was. Sasuke just simply watched with slight interest, seeing the fight as being pretty easy, until one of the grunts had used some type of projectile weapon. They had kunai launchers back at the elemental nations, but these were obviously far more superior and deadly. Naruto's eyes had widened a bit at the explosion the mystery man had caused, and on instinct was about to go over and help the girl. "No, you will not be interfering. You'll just end up getting in the way if anything. You don't know how to properly fight yet," Glinda explained in a serious tone as she grabbed Naruto's shoulder to stop him from going, which caused him to turn towards her in order to convince the middle-aged woman. "No, arguing with me. You two stay here, I'll go handle this," she ordered in a serious tone, while giving Naruto a glare to show she meant business. Glinda took off after the two, while Naruto growled a bit in annoyance at not being allowed to help. Sasuke merely stayed silent at the whole ordeal before looking at his blonde-haired friend. He had a feeling that Naruto was going to get the two of them in trouble, considering Naruto had a knack for attracting trouble no matter where he went. "You can always be the hero, idiot. Just let this one go before you do something really stupid," Sasuke commented. Naruto clenched his fist a bit and looked down to the ground a little. "All right, let's make sure the clerk got the money before we leave with the weapons," he said as he released a defeated sigh. Sasuke raised an eyebrow as he turned and started walking to the counter again, but his ears immediately caught the sound of running. He saw Naruto running after them, which ticked the Uchiha off. Sasuke ran after Naruto, knowing there was no stopping the blonde idiot now. "Hey!" Ruby exclaimed as she landed on the roof. Roman stopped running and turned his head a bit towards Ruby. "Persistent," he muttered under his breath as a bullhead rose up above the building they were on. Roman proceeded to jump onto the bullhead before turning around and holding a red dust crystal in his hand. "End of the line, Red," he shouted before throwing the crystal and aiming at it with his weapon. Roman shot at the crystal and started laughing a bit manically in glee, thinking he'd beaten Ruby, but his face immediately held a scowl as he saw Ruby and another woman, whom had created a purple-colored energy shield using some kind of wand in her right hand. Using her free hand, Glinda fixed her glasses before sending out purple beams to hit the aircraft, effectively causing it to rock in the air, preventing its immediate escape. Roman stumbled as the bullhead was being hit continuously as he made his way to the cockpit where a black-haired woman in a red dress with golden accents was piloting the aircraft. "We got a huntress," Roman remarked as he and the mysterious woman switched places. Glinda started glowing a bit before waving her wand-like weapon and shooting out a ball of energy that went above the vehicle. It then began to form storm clouds before she waved her weapon down, causing shards of ice to fall from the clouds. The shards started impaling the bullhead and even almost hit Roman, whom managed to dodge it, before the woman walked to the opened hatch. Glinda narrowed her eyes a bit as the black-haired woman. Flames surrounded the woman's hands before she shot a ball of fire at Glinda, whom had created another energy shield to block the attack. The red-dressed woman immediately followed up by creating a pillar of fire right under Glinda, but she did a backflip at the last second. Naruto and Sasuke got onto the top of the roof and ran over to Ruby and Glinda. Glinda gave a slight glare at Naruto, but didn't say anything seeing as this wasn't the situation for it. Ruby was a little confused about the newcomers, but didn't make a comment about it. Glinda used the concrete to form a spear-like weapon and shot it at the ship. Cinder retaliated by shooting multiple balls of fire to break up the concrete, but the blonde-haired woman reformed the concrete to continue the attack. Roman titled the side of the bullhead enough to cause the concrete to ricochet into the air. Glinda didn't let up her attack and made 3 spear-like things of concrete and aimed them all at the top of the aircraft. Cinder responded by created a pulse of fire destroying the concrete. Ruby switched to gun mode on Crescent Rose and started firing at Cinder. Naruto started running towards the bullhead before Sasuke gave him a boost jump into the air. The Uchiha began throwing shuriken with precise aim at the woman as well. Cinder used her fire abilities to deflect the shots and shuriken turning both to ash. Her eyes widened a bit as she saw Naruto coming in close in order to punch her. Her surprised demeanor disappeared in less than a second as she pulled her hand back and surrounded her hand in flames. Cinder proceeded to punch Naruto in the gut and sent him flying back and rolling the ground, stopping in front of Sasuke and the 2 girls. The black-haired woman created 5 circles of flame in an arc to hit all 4 of her intended targets. Glinda's eyes widened a bit before she used her abilities to toss the teens to the side before dodge rolling out of the way as well. A split second later the pillar of flames shot into the air. Glinda looked into the sky and watched as the bullhead escaped with the 2 criminals. Naruto was currently sitting in the nurse office being glared at by Kushina, whom had to take care of the minor burns he had. His aura wasn't fully in sync with his body, yet so the healing capabilities weren't working like they should at the moment. He sighed a bit seeing as it was obvious his mother wasn't very happy with him, but at the same time she was proud of him. The blonde teen figured she was mainly upset at the fact that he did something reckless and got hurt in the process. "Sue, why were you chosen to be a nurse's assistant, Mom?" Naruto asked, trying to break the tension. Kushina let out a small sigh figuring she couldn't be upset with him forever. "Well, I'm not sure if you knew, but back at home Uzumaki's generally knew of at least minor to impressive medical ninjutsu. I personally didn't have any skill in it, but I asked for that ability from Hagoromo as a semblance because I seem to have 2 men in my life that apparently love to injure themselves." The redhead explained, indicating to her son and husband. Naruto chuckled a little bit nervously, while rubbing the back of his head. "Yeah, I have no comment about that. I wish I could have done more to help though, but I was mainly a ninjutsu user back in Konoha. Now I don't think that hand-to-hand combat is gonna cut it," Naruto explained in a minor somber tone. The red-hot habanero studied her son for a couple of seconds before patting him on the back. "Well, I may have a solution to that, Naruto. I saw the types of weapons you chose, and I gotta admit it's a pretty interesting choice to say the least. Now luckily you have an awesome mother, who may happen to be skilled in using a blade. If you want I can train you, son. I mean you have a few days before the exam anyways, but if you want me to train you there will be one condition. You've gotta be prepared to pretty much do non-stop training for the next few days," Kushina offered. A big smile came upon Naruto's face at what his mother said. "Sweet, now I can actually stand a chance to do something," Naruto exclaimed as he hugged his mom. The 2 laughed a bit as Minato came walking into the office and crossed his arms a bit with a smile at the scene in front of him. He decided to let them have their little motherson moment before he had Naruto go to Ozpin's office. He instead went to go find Sasuke and let him know that the headmaster wanted to see him and Naruto. Sparks flew in different directions as Sasuke and Itachi's swords clashed. Sasuke was getting a feel of using his new weapon because there were slight differences in the feel to it. His weapon was a little lighter than his old one, but the metal was also more durable and sharp than his previous sword. Itachi pushed Sasuke back and brought his katana down, but his little brother blocked it. The 2 were about to continue their little match, but they noticed their mother walked onto the little training grounds, which was partially in the woods they were located at. "Sasuke, Minato wishes to speak with you. Makoto explained as Minato walked into their view followed by Fugaku. Sasuke sheathed his weapon before walking over to Naruto's dad, and waited for him to explain what he needed. Hey Sasuke, Professor Ozpin wanted to speak with you and Naruto again. You'll find him in his office. I'm gonna go get Naruto after this, anyways that's all I came to tell you. Minato explained before looked at Makoto and Fugaku. I'll see the two of you later. He bowed a bit in respect, which was returned to him, before he left to get his son. Naruto walked into Professor Ozpin's office after his dad had told him that the headmaster wanted to talk to him. Sasuke was already leaning against a wall with his arms crossed waiting for Naruto to arrive. The blonde teen looked at Ozpin, who was sitting in his desk with his hands clasped together. Welcome, Mr. Uzumaki, please have a seat. I'd basically like to talk about what's gonna happen in a few days. The headmaster stated as he gestured to a couple of seats, which Naruto and Sasuke sat in. Now, you two are definitely an interesting duo. Naruto, from what Sasuke has told me you ignored orders and went to help the girl and Glinda. Most would see this as a form of stupidity, which on some degree it is considering you have not gotten used to your body, but I also find this quality interesting. As you know, I'm going to be giving an examination to all the incoming students of Beacon Academy. You two are not allowed to talk about being from a different world, but there is something I can do. He stated cryptically. The exam will be in 5 days, which is the second night that the students arrive. On the first day, I will make an introduction, and during that introduction I will introduce the two of you. You will be from an isolated village that is not known on any recorded maps and will stay as such because your home loves its privacy, and we'll honor that request. I will also hold a little sparring session between the two of you, and anyone that wants to watch is welcomed. This is mainly to allow me to examine your skills and make sure that you two will be prepared for the exam I have planned for everyone else. Is all that clear? Professor Ozpin asked. Naruto had a smirk on his face as he looked at Sasuke. Well, looks like we get to have that little fight after all, huh Sasuke? Are you ready to get your butt kicked? The blonde teen said with some excitement in his voice. TCH, you can only try, loser, but you'll only fail. Sasuke mocked, while Professor Ozpin smiled a bit. Alright, it's settled then. Now if you two would excuse me, I have to talk to a certain red-hooded girl. The headmaster explained as he left his office followed by the two rivals. Glinda was pacing around an interrogation room with a screen in her hand showing her different information. I hope you realize that your actions tonight will not be taken lightly, young lady. You put yourself and others at great danger. Glinda scolded towards a downcast Ruby. But they started it. Ruby remarked, trying to defend herself. If it were up to me, you'd be sent home with a pat on the back. Glinda started, causing Ruby to develop a smile on her face. And a slap on the wrist. She said, emphasizing what was said by slapping her riding crop on the table, causing Ruby to squeak in fear. But, there is someone here that would like to meet you. Glinda finished, while moving to the side and causing Ruby to have a small look of confusion on her face. Professor Ozpin walked into the dark room with a plate of cookies in one hand, and a mug in the other. Ruby rose. You have silver eyes. He commented as he leaned in a bit. Ruby replied, confused on how to properly reply. So, where did you learn to do this? The headmaster gestured towards the screen that was displaying the battle fought in the city. Signal Academy, the red-hooded girl replied, unsure of what he was asking. They taught you to use one of the most dangerous weapons ever designed? The white-haired man asked. Well, one teacher in particular. Ruby explained. I see, Ozpin remarked as he put the plate of cookies on the table, which Ruby started eating one after another. It's just that I've only seen one other side wielder of that skill before. A dusty old crow, he finished while looking up a bit. Oh, Thash, my uncle. Ruby commented with her mouth full before coughing a bit and clearing her throat. Sorry, that's my Uncle Crow. He's a teacher at Signal. I was complete garbage before he took me under his wing. Now I'm all like woo wada oo. The young girl yelled in a childlike manner. So I've noticed, Ozpin replied with some amusement in his voice as he placed his mug down. And what is an adorable girl, such as yourself, doing at a school designed to train warriors? He asked curiously. Well, I want to be a huntress. Ruby told him honestly. You want to slay monsters. The headmaster asked. Yay, I only have 2 more years left at Signal, and then I'm going to apply to Beacon. See, my sister is starting there this year, and she's trying to become a huntress, and I'm trying to become a huntress cause I wanna help people, and my parents always taught us to help others, and I thought oh well you might as well make a career out of it. I mean the police are alright, but huntsman and huntress are just so much more romantic and exciting, cool and sha ya know. Ruby childishly exclaimed. Do you know who I am? The white-haired man asked. You're Professor Ozpin, you're the headmaster at Beacon Academy. Ruby stated calmly. Hello, Ozpin greeted. Nice to meet you, Ruby replied. You want to come to my school? The professor asked. More than anything, Ruby dreamily stated. Professor Ozpin looked at Glinda who grunted as a reply before looking back at Ruby. Well okay. He simply stated, which Ruby started donning a big smile upon her face. Naruto was sweating and breathing heavily from training with his mother. She definitely was a slave driver, but he always enjoyed the challenge. It was the start of the semester for Beacon Academy, which meant that his training was pretty much done with training for the exam. He had come a long way and his swordsmanship skills improved greatly. Naruto had started developing his own style of fighting, which closely resembled his style of hand-to-hand combat. Minato was watching his wife and son from afar assumed at the sight. It had been a while since he last saw Kushina really excited like this. Naruto had also been working on using guns, mainly pistols, off to the side in order to have some familiarity with them. He also noticed a change in Naruto's fighting. He had become more calm and wasn't as quick to anger for the most part. Naruto still had his moments, but not as much as from the Fourth Shinobi World War. The war had matured him greatly in combat, yet he still kept that playful demeanor out of battle and in sparring matches. Naruto really was a mix of him and Kushina. Alright you two, that's enough for today, Minato stated as they just clashed weapons before sheathing them both. Naruto, you should get some rest. Professor Ozpin wants you two to head back to Vale in order to be picked up by the airship that will take you back to here to Beacon. It would look weird if you and Sasuke just happened to be here already when you're new students, plus it will give you a chance to make some friends. Minato explained. Naruto let out a sigh of relief before nodding a bit. Sure sounds like a plan, Dad. Hey, any luck on finding a person who can craft a weapon like mine, but can transform into a gun? He asked. Minato frowned a bit and shook his head. No, it's not exactly easy to find someone like that when you're new to this world. I mean there are some people, but I don't think they'll live up to your expectations, Naruto. I'd have a crack at it myself, but your mother and I have been working on something for both you and Sasuke. No, I'm not going to tell you what it is. It's a secret, so you'll just have to wait. The blonde-haired man finished. Naruto groaned a bit in defeat. Alright, well I'm going to go get my stuff, then get Sasuke. We'll head out to Vale and meet up with the rest of the students to board the airship. Naruto and Sasuke were walking through the streets heading towards Signal Academy, where the previous graduates were to go and wait to be picked up in the airship. Naruto had the Uzumaki symbol sewn to the back of his hoodie and sported a dust crystal necklace that looked very similar to Tsunade's former necklace before it was destroyed. Sasuke had the Uchiha symbol on the back of his high-collared shirt, plus a necklace with the Uchiha crest given to him by his mother. The dark-haired teen had his weapon strapped at its usual place, while Naruto had one strapped across his back and on his left hip. Upon arriving at Signal, they blended in with the crowd of graduates in order not to attract any attention. It wasn't 5 minutes later when the airship arrived and all the graduates that would be attending Beacon started getting Ono the aircraft. There were many interesting people on the vehicle. The one that interested Naruto the most were the Faunus. He heard, saw, and read that they were alienated and mistreated, which didn't bode well with him because of his former status as a Jinchuriki. The crowd thinned out on the airship considering there were more than one levels to it, so there was a lot more room to move around. Sasuke didn't want to make eye contact with anyone or attract anyone's attention. He personally didn't want to deal with fangirls again, but a deep part of him actually wondered if he deserved all of this. This couldn't be seen on his face, which held a neutral expression to it like always. Naruto was looking around and spotted the red-hooded girl from a few days ago, which caused him to smile a bit because he wanted to talk to her as well as ask about her weapon.
Oh, I can't believe my baby sister is going to Beacon with me. This is the best day ever. Yang exclaimed excitedly. Please stop, Ruby muttered from being crushed by her older sister.
But I'm so proud of you. Yang replied. Ruby sighed a bit and replied. Really sis, it was nothing.
What do you mean? It was incredible. Everyone at Beacon is going to think you're the bee's knees. The violet-eyed girl remarked.
I don't want to be the bee's knees, okay? I don't want to be any kind of knees. I just want to be a normal girl with normal knees. Ruby nervously stated. What's wrong with you? Aren't you excited? Yang asked.
Of course I'm excited. I got moved ahead 2 years. I don't want people to think I'm special or anything. The silver-eyed girl replied.
But you are special. Yang said in comforting manner while putting one arm around Ruby's shoulder.
The robbery was led by the nefarious criminal, Roman Torchwick, who continues to evade authorities. If you have any information on his whereabouts, please contact the Vale Police Department. Back to you, Lisa. The announcement began. Thank you, Cyril. In other news, this Saturday's Faunus civil rights protest turned dark when members of the White Fang disrupted the ceremony. The once peaceful organization has now disrupted. The announcement was cut off when a hologram of Glinda appeared with her hands behind her back. Hello and welcome to Beacon. Glinda started. Who's that? Yang asked.
My name is Glinda Goodwitch. Glinda indirectly replied. Oh, Yang remarked. You are among a privileged few who have received the honor of being selected to attend this prestigious academy. Our world is experiencing an incredible time of peace, and as future huntsmen and huntresses, it is your duty to uphold it. You have demonstrated the courage needed for such a task, and now it is our turn to provide you with the knowledge and the training to protect our world. Glinda finished before the hologram disappeared.
Oh woo, Ruby excitedly commented while walking to the window. Look, you can see signal from up here. I guess home isn't too far after all. She muttered quietly.
Beacon's our home now. Yang stated as she walked up to Ruby. They heard Juan making nauseous sounds. Well, I guess the view isn't for everyone, Yang remarked.
It was nice moment while it lasted. Ruby stated. I wonder who we're gonna meet. Yang commented. I just hope they're better than Vomit Boy. Ruby said. Oh Yang, gross, you have puke on your shoe. She exclaimed. Gross, 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 gross. Yang stated in panic.
Get away, oh, get away from me. Get away from me, get away from me, get away from me. Ruby panicked while attempting to stay away from her sister.
Naruto watched from the distance and chuckled a bit at the scene before looking at Sasuke. Yep, definitely going to be an interesting year, buddy. I can't wait to see what this place has to offer, he remarked to his rival. TCH. Sasuke replied nonchalantly, although he agreed with Naruto's comment in his mind as the two looked outside watching Beacon Academy get closer and closer. All the students could see the pier to Beacon Academy as they arrived. The airship turned to the side as its wings folded down, and it slowly aligned the exit ramp with the pier. As soon as the doors opened, John rushed past a few other students to be the first one off. His hands were covering his mouth as he was gagging, yet trying to hold it in until he made it to a trash can before vomiting into it. Naruto raised an eyebrow a bit as he walked by his fellow blonde classmate, although ignored it considering motion sickness wasn't exactly uncommon.
John was wearing a white chest plate along with shoulder armor.
Under the armor, there was a black hoodie with reddish-orange sleeves. He also was wearing blue pants with a white patch on the left knee and black shoes with his symbol on the sole. He has 2 belts crisscrossing his waist, both different shades of brown, and one has a small pouch on it. On his hands were brown wrist-length gloves with exposed fingertips and a small metal plate on the back. His sword was strapped to the left side of his waist in a sheath that doubles as a collapsible shield.
The two were in the middle of the crowd and stayed as such, until all students began splitting up. Sasuke started walking off, but Naruto grabbed his shoulder before gesturing to both Ruby and the blonde-haired teenage girl that was next to her. Sasuke rolled his eyes a bit, but reluctantly followed his obnoxious friend towards the 2 girls, whom were admiring the academy.
Woo! Both Ruby and Yang exclaimed in awe as they looked at Beacon Academy and its scenery. The view from Vale's got nothing on this. The violet-eyed teen commented as she crossed her arms.
Ruby's eyes widened a bit as she let out a fangirlish gasp and changed into a chibi form of herself. Oh sis, that kid's got a collapsible staff. "Ah, and she has a fire sword," she childishly stated in excitement while pointing. "Easy there, little sister. They're just weapons," Yang stated calmly to bring her sister out of her daze.
"Just weapons. They're an extension of ourselves. They're a part of us. Oh, they're so cool," the silver-eyed girl said in offense to her sister's comment. "Well, why can't you swoon over your own weapon? Aren't you happy with it?" Yang questioned. "Of course I'm happy with Crescent Rose. I just really like seeing new ones. It's like meeting new people but better," Ruby remarked. "Ruby, come on, why don't you go try and make some friends of your own?" the young woman asked, while pulling Ruby's hood over her head. "But why would I need friends when I have you?" Ruby asked her sister as she took the hood off.
A few other people showed up behind Yang as she started stepping away. Actually my friends are here now. Gotta go catch up. Catch ya. Bye," she exclaimed very quickly before running off with her friends, leaving Ruby in the dust. Ruby was spinning around with a dizzy look on her face, confused at the situation. "Wait, where are you going? Are we supposed to go to our dorms? Where are our dorms? Do we even have dorms?" she questioned before letting out a sigh as she took a step back. "I don't know what I'm doing," Ruby admitted in defeat before following backwards and landing in some luggage. "What are you doing?" a new feminine angrily asked. The young woman was dressed in a pale blue bolero jacket over a similarly colored thigh-length dress with a piece of black lace making up the neckline of the dress, which was a combat skirt. The inside of the bolero was red with the sleeves turning blue as they get closer to her wrists. The bolero has the Schnee crest on the back that bears a resemblance to a snowflake. She was wearing an apple-shaped necklace along with a pair of thin, rectangular earrings along with white, heeled wedge boots that go to midcalf, also lined with red on the inside.
Her long white hair was pulled back in an off-center ponytail, at the base of which is a small tiara that resembles icicles. She also had a pale complexion and ice blue eyes, and if you looked closely you could see a crooked scar down her left eye. Finally, there was also a small bag on the back of her dress wrapped around her waist with a ribbon. Sorry," Ruby apologized as she sat up. "Sorry, do you have any idea of the damage you could have caused?" the white-haired girl scolded. Ruby responded in an unsure manner as she grabbed one of the suitcases. "Give me that," Weiss ordered as she took the suitcase from Ruby. "This is dust, mined and purified from the Schnee quarry," she explained as she reached for a bottle of dust, which was in a powdered state. The red-hooded girl continued in her confused state. "What are you, brain dead? Dust," Weiss mocked as she closed the suitcase and started shaking the bottle of red dusts. "Fire, water, lightning, energy," she explained. "Ugh," the silver-eyed girl began as she couldn't form words because the dust was tickling her nose. "Are you even listening to me? Is any of this sinking in?" Weiss questioned as she gave one final shake of the bottle, which caused some more powdered dust to make its way over to the nose of Ruby. "Bleerer got you," the 15-year-old girl sneezed, causing a small non-lethal explosion resulting in smoke, lightning, and other effects from the ignition of the dust. The bottle flew out of Weiss's hand before it landed on the ground before rolling towards a black boot. The intact bottle was picked up by a yellow-eyed girl, whom had kept her attention on the book the whole time. She turned the bottle before looking at the logo, then focusing her attention from where it came from. The young woman noticed that Weiss was covered in soot, while scolding Ruby. Naruto had been about to go help Ruby up, until Weiss had walked over. He had thought she was going to help the redhead up, but was instantly proven wrong the way Weiss started acting. It ticked him off a bit because Ruby was trying to apologize, yet was still getting yelled at. Sasuke just crossed his arms a bit as he watched the scene. He figured it wasn't any of his business to get involved with the clumsy girl and bratty girl. The Uchiha just watched as Naruto started walking over to the two girls.
"Unbelievable. This is exactly the kind of thing I was talking about," the white-haired girl complained as she stomped on the ground, causing all the soot to fly off of her. "I'm really sorry," Ruby apologized, while poking her two pointer fingers together in an ashamed manner.
You complete dolt. What are you even doing here? Aren't you a little young to be attending Beacon?" Weiss questioned as she insulted Ruby. "Well, Ruby started before she was interrupted by Weiss. "This isn't your ordinary combat school. It's not just sparring and practice, you know. We're here to fight monsters, so, watch where you're going. Weiss finished as she crossed her arms.
Hey, there's no reason to be yelling at her, ya no? Naruto exclaimed a bit as he interrupted the two. Weiss and Ruby, whom recognized the person who intruded, looked at the spiky-haired blonde teen that raised his voice at Weiss. This conversation is none of your business, so butt out, the white-haired girl remarked. You made it my business by being a jerk to her, besides she said she was sorry, princess, Naruto retorted. It's Eris actually, another feminine voice replied in a calm tone. The young girl was of pale complexion, similar to Ruby Rose. She had long, wavy black hair, and her eyes were amber, complemented by light purple eyeshadow flaring backwards. The eyes were slightly tilted upwards at the ends, giving her a somewhat cat-like appearance. She also had a black ribbon tied in the form of a bow.
Her outfit consisted of black low-heeled boots and stockings that start off black at her hips, but gradually fade to purple as they near her shoes.
On the outside of her stockings, there were white symbols that are most likely belladonna flowers.
There were black ribbons on both of her arms, with a black detached sleeve and a silver band on her left arm. She wore a black buttoned vest with coattails, and a white, sleeveless undershirt that exposes part of her midriff with white shorts that may be connected to her shirt, although it is partly obscured by the vest. Her shorts had a zipper on the front of each leg. She also had a detached scarf-like collar around her neck.
Weiss Schnee, heiress to the Schnee Dust Company, one of the largest producers of energy propellant in the world, Blake stated to Ruby and Naruto. Finally, some recognition. Weiss smugly stated to both Naruto and Ruby. The same company infamous for its controversial labor forces and questionable business partners. The raven-haired girl finished in an insulting manner, causing Ruby to giggling in amusement. Wah. How dare the nerve of, Weiss stated, not managing to get the words out as she scoffed and swiped the bottle of red dust from Blake's hand before storming off. I promise I'll make this up to you. Ruby yelled towards Weiss before looking down a bit in defeat and sighing. I guess I'm not the only one having a rough first day. The silver-eyed girl commented out loud. Sue, what's a? She stopped as she turned to Blake, whom was walking off.
Naruto watched Weiss and Blake leave before looking at Ruby. Well, this day suddenly got a little more interesting, huh? He commented towards the redhead.
Why, you're not going to walk off, are you? Ruby asked with a small frown on her face. Nah, I'm not quiet and somewhat cold-hearted. That would be that emo bastard friend of mine over there. Naruto jokingly replied as he gestured towards Sasuke, who heard the remark and rolled his eyes in response. I actually came by to say hello to you, to be honest. I'm Naruto Namikaze, by the way. He greeted in a friendly manner with a big smile on his face, especially since it felt good to use his true last name, considering him and his mother decided to take his father's last name finally. Ruby wasn't sure how to really respond at first, since she wasn't the best at meeting new people, but giggled a little at his comment, causing her confidence to grow a bit. I'm Ruby Rose, and you two are the ones that tried helping me at the rooftops with Glinda. Why did you want to say hi to me? I'm not really anyone special, she curiously asked with some confusion in her face. I beg to differ, Ruby. The way you fought back during that day was pretty awesome. I especially love that scythe weapon you had. I'm sure it takes skill to actually use it. Naruto stated in praise. Ruby had blushed a bit at the praise, but immediately got excited as he mentioned her weapon. Yay, Crescent Rose is my baby. I made it myself, you know. It's also a gun. She gloated a bit to Naruto.
Naruto's eyes widened a little because he didn't know she made that weapon. Wow, that's awesome. I didn't know you had made it, he said in amusement as he pulled out one of his weapons. Mine is just a regular wakizashi. I actually bought it at the store on the day you saw me, he stated before sheathing it once again. You didn't build your own weapon. I thought usually everyone built their own weapon at Signal Academy, the silver-eyed girl commented. Naruto chuckled a bit and rubbed the back of his head a little, knowing if he said anything about being from a different world he'd be dead. Well, actually back at my home I didn't really use a blade save for like a small dagger-like weapon. I used my skills to fight mostly. My friend and I are actually trying to find someone to make us custom weapons, since neither of us have any experience in making weapons like Crescent Rose. Oh, Well, there's nothing wrong with the classics, but what kind of weapon are you two looking for? She, with a curious tone laced in her voice as Ruby showed it was obvious she was interested in the weapons they wanted considering she was a weapon nut. Well, I basically wanted something like my two weapons I have on me, but with the ability to transform into pistols. I don't honestly know about Sasuke, but I kinda overheard him saying something about archery a couple of days ago. I'm not honestly sure what he was talking about though. I'm not even sure if he has any skills in archery. Naruto commented as he crossed his arms and tilted his head a bit in thought. Awesome. Those sound like they'd be really cool. Hey, I have an idea. What if? Ruby began, but was cut off by Sasuke.
Naruto, we need to head out. You know we need to go to a different place than the rest of them. Let's go. Sasuke commented in his commanding voice before starting to walk off.
Naruto glared a bit at Sasuke, whom was ignoring the expression, for interrupting Ruby, but sighed a bit in defeat. Sorry about that, Ruby. He's always like that. Hey, maybe we can talk later on. Catch y'all later, Naruto exclaimed as he left to follow Sasuke. But, I didn't even get to finish what I was saying, Ruby sadly commented as she frowned a bit before falling to the ground with her legs off to the side, then falling backwards. Welcome to Beacon, the silver-eyed girl finished as she closed her eyes.
A shadow of a young man appeared over Ruby, whom opened her eyes. Hey, I'm John. The young man stated as he offered his hand out to help her.
Ruby looked around a little bit before giving a small smile. I'm Ruby, she replied as she accepted his hand and stood up before snickering a little. Aren't you the guy that threw up on the ship? She amusedly asked. A few minutes later, all I'm saying is that motion sickness is a much more common problem than people let on. John defended as both him and Ruby were walking down a path. Look, I'm sorry, Vomit Boy was the first thing that came to mind. Ruby remarked in an apologetic tone.
Oh yay. What if I called you Crater Face? The scraggly teen retorted.
Hey, that explosion was an accident. The silver-eyed girl defended. Well, the name's John Arc. Short, sweet, rolls of the tongue. Ladies love it, John said in a cocky-like manner as he emphasized with his hands. Do they? Ruby questioned. They will. Well, too hope they will. I mean, my mom always says that. Never mind. He tried defending himself before stopping himself from saying anything else, while looking down in defeat. Ruby chuckled a little nervously at the situation. Sue, I got this thing. The red-headed girl said as she pulled out her scythe, which was slightly embedded into the ground, trying to break the awkwardness. Whoa, is that a scythe? John asked in surprise as he had jumped back a little. It's also a customizable, high-impact sniper rifle, Ruby proudly explained as she put crescent rows in both hands. A WHAA? The young man asked in a confused manner. Ruby cocked the weapon before answering. It's also a gun. Oh, that's cool, John replied excitement. So what do you got? Ruby curiously asked.
Oh, I got this sword. The blonde teen nervously stated as he unsheathed his sword, and wielded it in his right hand.
Ooh, the young girl replied with awe. Yay, I've got a shield too, he commented as he pulled it off his belt, causing it to expand before wielding it in his left hand. So what do they do? Ruby asked as she touched the shield, resulting in it collapsing out of John's hand. Whoa, earth, John started saying as he attempted to catch his shield, which expanded once again as soon as it was caught. The shield gets smaller, so when I get tired of carrying it I just put it away. He finished after collapsing his shield. But wouldn't it weigh the same? Ruby asked, confused at his statement. Yay, it does, John replied as his head fell down a bit in shame. Well, I'm kind of a dork when it comes to weapons. I guess I did go a bit overboard in designing it, Ruby commented, trying to cheer John up. Wait, you made that? He curiously stated. Of course, all students at Signal forge their own weapons, didn't you make yours? Ruby asked as John looked at his weapon. It's a hand-me-down. My great-great-grandfather used it to fight in the war. The blonde-haired young man explained. Sounds more like a family heirloom to me, the silver-eyed girl commented in an accidental, unthoughtful tone, letting out a nervous chuckle. Well, I like it. Not many people have an appreciation for the classics these days. Ruby finished trying to correct her mistake. Yay, The classics. Juan simply said. So, why'd you help me back out there in the courtyard? The hooded girl asked as she began walking along the path again. Why not? My mom always says strangers are just friends you haven't met yet. He replied as he followed her. Hey, where are we going? Ruby asked. Oh, I don't know. I was following you. Why you think there might be a directory, maybe a food court, some kind of recognizable landmark? John asked, earning a couple of snickers from Ruby. Is that a no? He finished. That's a no, the young girl stated with a slightly chuckle. At the amphitheater, Ruby and John eventually had found their way to the amphitheater, where the announcement was taking place. It was full of the students, who were mingling, that were new to Beacon Academy. Ruby looked around a bit before she heard her sister's voice call to her. Ruby, over here, I saved you a spot. Yang yelled loud enough for her sister to hear, while waving at her. Oh, hey, I gotta go. I'll see you after the ceremony, Ruby said as she gave her farewell to John.
Hey, wait. Aw, great. Where am I supposed to find another nice, quirky girl to talk to? The scraggly teen asked himself before walking off, not noticing another girl was watching.
How's your first day going, little sister? Yang asked with her hands on her hips. Ruby, a look of disapproval upon her face along with her arms crossed. You mean since you ditched me and I exploded? The silver-eyed girl asked in an annoyed manner. Yikes, meltdown already, the violet-eyed girl questioned. I literally exploded a hole in front of the school, and there was some fire, and to think some ice. Ruby commented, trying to remember. Are you being sarcastic? Yang asked in a joking tone.
I wish. I tripped over some crabby girl's luggage, and then she yelled at me, and then I sneezed, and then I exploded, and then she yelled again, and I felt really bad, and I just wanted her to stop yelling at me. Ruby explained in a hurtful tone, not noticing the very girl she was talking about was behind her.
You, Weiss yelled at Ruby, causing her to jump into her sister's arms. Oh, gosh, it's happening again, the red-hooded girl exclaimed. You're lucky we weren't blown off the side of the cliff, the heiress scolded. Oh my gosh, you really exploded, Yang remarked in realization.
It was an accident. It was an accident, Ruby defended as she got out of her sister's arms. What's this? She asked as Weiss shoved a pamphlet in front of Ruby's face. The Schnee Dust Company is not responsible for any injuries or damages sustained while operating a Schnee Dust product. Although not mandatory, the Schnee family highly encourages their customers to read and familiarize themselves with this easy-to-follow guide on dust practice and application in the field. Weiss explained, although to Ruby her voice seemed to get higher-pitched and faster as she gave the information.
The redhead confusingly stated. You really want to start making things up to me? Weiss asked. Absolutely, Ruby questioned in a confused manner. Read this and don't ever speak to me again, the heiress ordered. Look, it sounds like you two just got off on the wrong foot. Why don't you try to start over and be friends, okay? Yang asked, trying to mend things. Yay, great idea, sis, Ruby remarked before turning to Weiss and clearing her throat. Hello Weiss, I'm Ruby. Wanna hang out? We can go shopping for school supplies, she asked in a hopeful tone.
Yay, and we can paint our nails, and try on clothes, and talk about cute boys like tall, blonde, and scraggly over there, Weiss sarcastically replied while gesturing towards John. Wow, really? The 15-year-old excitedly asked. No, Weiss replied in an annoyed tone as the feedback from the mic come onto the speakers. Ozpin cleared his throat a bit as well as fixed his glasses.
I'll keep this brief. You have traveled here today in search of knowledge, to hone your craft and acquire new skills, and when you have finished, you plan to dedicate your life to the protection to the people, but I look amongst you, and all I see is wasted energy in need of purpose, direction. You assume knowledge will free you of this, but your time at this school will prove that knowledge can only carry you so far. It is up to you to take the first step, he finished in abnormal manner as he walked off, and Glinda walked up to the microphone. You will gather in the ballroom tonight. Your initiation will begin the day after tomorrow, but know there is a special reason for this, considering your initiation would have been tomorrow. Professor Ozpin has left it up to me to introduce a couple of new people here, she calmly stated with her hands behind her back, while Naruto and Sasuke walked up to the stage and stood right behind Glinda. This is Naruto Namikaze and Sasuke Uchiha. They are from a very isolated village that is not charted on any map, and as such we ask you to not pry about the location. Their village would prefer to keep their location a secret, and we will honor their request. Later on this evening, these two will have a sparring match to demonstrate their skills here at the amphitheater. This is to make sure they are prepared for the initiation, seeing as all of us don't know of their skill level compared to all of you. All students are invited to watch the match, if they choose to do so. When the initiation begins, be ready. You are dismissed, she finished explained as she walked away, while Naruto and Sasuke got off the stage to get prepared for their match. Professor Ozpin seemed kind of off. Yang remarked. It's almost like he wasn't even there. Ruby replied somewhat confused. I'm a natural blonde, you know. John stated to Weiss, who just shook her head in annoyance before walking off. I think we should go see that sparring match. The spiky blonde-haired one helped defend me when Weiss was yelling at me. Ruby stated as she looked at her sister. I'm up for it. It would give us something to do instead of being bored for the rest of the day, besides they're both pretty cute. Yang replied with an ever so slight perverted smile. You're so weird sometimes, Yang. Ruby jokingly stated as she looked at John. You're welcome to join us as well if you want. She finished trying to be nice to the shaggy blonde-haired boy. Ooh, sure, sounds good. I'll meet the two of you here then. John said with a small smile of thanks before waving to the two of them and leaving. Yang waved a bit back before turning to her little sister. Hey Ruby, let's go get something to eat before the match starts. I'm getting hungry anyways, she stated as Ruby nodded in agreement before they started heading towards the dining hall. A few hours later, within the Namikaze residence, Professor Ozpin had let Naruto's and Sasuke's family each have a decent-sized guest house that was on the Beacon Academy property. They both were fully furnished, and had a living room, kitchen, dining room, 2-bedroom, and 2-bath. Naruto was currently in his room making sure he had everything he needed for the match. His father managed to get some more shuriken made for both him and Sasuke, although not kunai, considering the two of them had weapons to use now. When the blonde teen knew he had everything ready, he fell back onto his bed. Kushina and Minato both walked in a couple of seconds later, only to find that he was apparently sleeping. I'm not asleep, ya know, Naruto stated as he opened his eyes and sat up looking at his parents. Is there something wrong? He asked curiously. Minato and Kushina walked over to their son and sat on each side of him. No, not really, we just wanted to see if you were ready for the match. It's in less than an hour after all, Minato asked his son. Plus you look like you're nervous, honey. Kushina finished as Naruto chuckled a bit. Yay, I'm going to head out in a bit and meet Sasuke at the amphitheater, and as for being nervous, I guess a little bit. Sasuke is more skilled in swordsmanship than me, but then again I think I am considered the #1 unpredictable vehicle, so I'm excited as well. The former Jinchuriki confidently said with a grin on his face. Oh hey, I almost forgot to ask. How will the sparring match work? I mean, I'm not sure if you two know, but Sasuke and I tend to go out, which kinda results in explosions at times. He said with small nervous chuckle, while rubbing the back of his head. Kushina giggled lightly, while her husband smiled a bit and began explaining things. Well, it's pretty simple really. Professor Ozpin will be able to monitor your aura strength, you could say. If the aura gets in the red zone, the math is over and the winner is declared. When you get hit or use certain abilities like a semblance, it drains your aura somewhat. This means you'll be able to pretty much go all out, but without having to worry about causing massive injury to one another. Now as for explosions, well, your mother and I took care of that. We managed to figure out how to place a barrier. I believe Sasuke's family has explained this to him as well, so don't have to worry about letting him know. Minato explained. Naruto tilted his head in confusion. A barrier? I thought you needed chakra in order to create the necessary seals or special tags to do that. How were you and mom able to figure out how to create barriers without chakra? Their son asked curiously. It wasn't easy, to be honest, but you gotta remember you have 2 sealing masters as parents. We also had Sasuke's parents help us. It's kind of a complicated process, but we were able to create barriers through the use of energy dust. Kushina explained. Oh, I guess that makes sense then.
I'm not going to worry about the details as long as it works. Anyways, I'm going to be heading off to go meet Sasuke. I'll see you guys at the match, Naruto exclaimed as he headed out.
At the Uchiha residence around the same time, Sasuke had just finished making sure everything was prepared for the battle. Sasuke still had a little more than an hour left before the match, so he was currently eating some food his mother had cooked. Itachi walked in a couple of minutes later and took a seat in the chair across from his little brother. Makoto came into the dining room when she heard her other son enter the place. "Would you like anything to eat, Itachi?" she asked politely. Itachi shook his head a bit. "No, thank you, I just came to talk to Sasuke for a bit before his match. I need to head out soon to make sure security is alright, seeing as there will be probably a lot of people at the match." He replied respectfully to his mom before looking Makoto. "What do you need to talk about?" Sasuke questioned. "How do you think your match with Naruto will go?" Itachi simply asked as he looked at his brother. Sasuke raised an eyebrow in response, but didn't answer at first. If we were talking about having a match back at home, I'd reluctantly admit that he was probably stronger than me. Now after coming here and having a lot of our abilities stripped, I'm not honestly sure. I have more skill than what he does in swordsmanship, but I don't plan to underestimate that idiot. It will be interesting, especially since our bodies are still getting used to things. I won't lose to him though," Sasuke simply remarked.
Itachi smirked a bit. "Well, I guess this match will be very interesting indeed. It's wise to not underestimate your friend. He has a way of turning anything to his advantage. I better get going, so I can make the match. Good luck, Sasuke," the older brother advised before standing up and leaving.
Couple of hours later, the area had been pretty much filled with majority of the students. All of the freshmen were definitely present at the match. Blake and Weiss were sitting close to people they didn't know, while Ruby, Young, and John were sitting next to each other. Everyone was excited to see the fight, especially the freshmen, seeing as this would be the first match of the semester. Professor Ozpin walked up to a microphone with his mug in hand as always.
"Thank you all for attending. I hope that this little match will be something worthy of watching, not just for you, but for me as well."
Everyone who is a returning student generally knows how matches work. New students, I expect that you listen to how things work in orientation as well, so no explanation is needed on how things work. There is a small change to the arena though, but I'll allow someone who better understands it to explain things. The headmaster stated as he walked off the stage towards his seat. Kushina walked up the stage and cleared her throat. She was wearing a black long sleeve under a cream-colored corset-like clothing, which had straps on it. She was also wearing a red combat skirt that went about mid-thigh with black leggings as well as bandages wrapped around her left thigh, and her shinobi sandals. Her katana, which was an ordinary weapon, was strapped to her right hip. "Good afternoon everyone. As Professor Ozpin stated, I will be explaining what this new change is.
I'm Kushina Namikaze, the assistant nurse as well as Naruto's mother.
My husband and I, along with the help of our dear friends Fugaku and Makoto, were able to create a barrier of sorts using energy dust and our own auras. This is still technically a work in progress, but its capabilities should be enough to allow people to go all out without having to worry about injury to watchers. I hope you all enjoy the match, thank you. Go Naruto," she exclaimed at the end, causing a good amount of the students to laugh in amusement, while Naruto face-palmed in the back with a tinge of red on his cheeks. The two contenders walked onto their side of the arena, which had begun to raise up as well as the lights were altered to black out everyone else. A light reflection could be seen as the barrier started forming at the edge of the platform, forming a dome-shaped fighting field. A screen then appeared above the dome showing both Naruto and Sasuke's pictures along with a green bar to show their aura level as a timer started counting down from 10. The crowd began counting down with the timer as the two fighters got into their respective stance. When the timer hit 0, a buzzer went off signaling the start of the match. Naruto and Sasuke charged at each other, although had yet to unsheathe their weapons. Naruto feigned a punch to the face, and instead went down low to attempt to knock Sasuke off his feet. Sasuke easily dodged it by jumping back a bit, although Naruto continued his charge and began throwing punches at his rival before going for a high kick to hit the Uchiha in the jaw. Sasuke brought his arm up and caught his leg, his body and arm locking it there before turning and throwing Naruto off to the side. He rushed at Naruto, while he was still in midair, and threw a punch right at Naruto's chest, whom brought his arms up in a defensive position to block it and take a brunt of the force. Sasuke's punch had enough force to send Naruto flying back a bit before rolling on the ground where he managed to recover. If one looked they would notice that a pinch of Naruto's aura bar went down.
The former Jinchuriki pulled out a few shuriken from his pouch and tossed them at Sasuke, whom reacted on instinct by simply dodging them.
Naruto a small smirk on his face as he pulled his hand back, which to the audience's surprise caused the projectiles to redirect their path and aim for their intended target once again. Sasuke was caught a little off guard as he saw the small reflection from the wires because he had never seen Naruto attempt something like that. He turned around, while jumping back, bringing out his weapon and immediately deflected every single one and turned around. As soon as Sasuke turned back to face Naruto, a fist dug itself within Sasuke's cheek causing the boy to grimace in pain before he was pushed back from the force. Sasuke brought his weapon into the ground and embedded it as he used it to slow his speed down and end up in a crouched position. There was an ever so slight spark of lightning that came from his weapon, but this went unnoticed by everyone. He wiped his mouth a bit tasting a little blood, but it went away as his aura healed it. Sasuke stood up and gestured towards his opponent in a mocking way to come and get him. Naruto glared a little as the two charged at each other. They both threw punches, yet caught them in their free hands ending up in a deadlock. The two of them had a look of determination, although Sasuke thought of a plan to get the upper hand even though it would hurt him quite a bit. The raven-haired teen reared his head back and headbutted Naruto in the forehead.
This was enough to shock Naruto, and cause him to stumble back a bit.
Sasuke took this opportunity to kick Naruto up into the air before jumping after him. He then began using Lion's Barrage on the blonde teen, but before he could land the final axe kick, Naruto twisted his body and caught Sasuke's foot. He proceeded to toss Sasuke towards the ground, but not before landing a punch in his rival's gut. Naruto continued by aiming to axe kick Sasuke as he hit the ground, but the Uchiha responded by throwing his body weight back and doing a backflip with his hands as Naruto's leg hit the ground instead. Naruto looked up waiting for an attack, but his eyes widened a bit in surprise. Sasuke, who was obviously a little surprised as well, was currently attached to the wall of the barrier. This was a shock to not only them, but the crowd seeing as something like this doesn't really happen. It looks like our bodies are getting more used to having aura than chakra. I'm surprised I can use my aura to stand on the wall. If I guess correctly, this is the only thing that we'll be able to do exactly like back when we had chakra. Hagoromo said that we wouldn't be able to use ninjutsu or genjutsu. I guess I should count myself lucky then, Sasuke thought to himself. Professor Ozpin put his hands together and leaned forward a little bit with a neutral look on his face. Well, things just got more interesting. I didn't expect their bodies to adapt in order to use an originally ability from their world. He muttered quietly to himself. Yang was speechless for a second as she turned to Ruby. Hey sis, do you have any idea how he did that? She asked, confused as to what just happened. Ruby gave a small shake of her head. No idea, but it seems even Naruto is surprised at what just happened. She examined a bit. Naruto snapped out of his state of shake as he pulled out one of his wakizashi. He jumped towards Sasuke, whom also pulled out his Chikuto holding it in a reverse grip. As he jumped towards the wall, the blue-eyed boy had a look of determination on his face as he managed to use his aura to stay attached to the barrier's wall. The two teens started slashing at each other, causing the blades to crash into one another, creating sparks in the process. Sasuke and Naruto slashed at one another at the same time, resulting in them ending in a deadlock. The two were attempting to overpower the other once again, but Naruto used his free hand to pull out his second blade and tried to attack Sasuke, who caught his wrist to prevent the blade from cutting him. The former Jinchuriki growled a little bit, but kicked his leg forward into Sasuke's gut, pushing him back. Their aura gauges were a little higher than halfway, but you could see the green starting to have a yellow coloration to it. Naruto didn't let up his attack as he began doing a combination of attacks with his weapons. Sasuke attempted to use his speed to either dodge or deflect each attack, but Naruto's unpredictable moves caused a few minor cuts to be formed on him only to be healed by his aura. Sasuke noticed out of the corner of his eye that his gauge, which was now in yellow, was slowly dwindling down. His eyes obtained a fierce look as he spun his body dodging a strike, and hit Naruto in the cheek with his foot before he moved to the offensive. Sasuke used his superior swordsmanship skills to keep Naruto off balance as the blonde attempted to keep up, yet kept getting hit. Sasuke ended up using his foot to swipe Naruto off his feet before punching him in the gut, sending him to the ground. Naruto hit the ground pretty hard, a little dazed, and shook his head a bit. When he opened his eyes, Sasuke's blade was pointed right at Naruto's face as the lights came back on, and a buzzer went off. Naruto groaned a bit in defeat as his head went back against the ground. Sasuke sheathed his weapon before he held his hand out to Naruto, which caught the young blonde off guard. Naruto's face donned a small smile as he accepted the help, stood up. The winner is Sasuke Uchiha, although it was a pretty close match, Glinda stated as she walked back onto the stage after the barrier was brought down by Naruto and Sasuke's family. Naruto looked at the screen and smiled a bit. It was pretty close, but Sasuke still won by a decent amount. The crowd cheered in excitement as the battle ended. Minato had a proud smile on his face even though Naruto lost, although Kushina was glaring at Makoto, whom had a smug smile on her face direction towards her childhood friend. Kushina's husband chuckled a bit as he clapped with the rest of the crowd. Well, that was definitely an interesting match, Professor Ozpin stated calmly as he walked up onto the stage. Naruto and Sasuke, you both passed my little test, he cryptically commented, which the two teens understood what he meant. Now the battle is over and I suggest you all get some sleep. You will have one day to rest before the initiation starts and I suggest you get prepared for it. Have a good night. The headmaster finished as he left the stage along with Glinda, while everyone else began leaving to head to the ballroom. Naruto noticed Ruby, and was about to go talk to her when both Naruto and Sasuke's family came over. Awesome, match you two. I honestly didn't expect you both to be able to use your aura to stand on the walls, ya know. Kushina excitedly commented. Congratulations son, I had a feeling you'd win, Makoto said with a slight bragging tone to tease her childhood friend. Naruto just chuckled a bit at the scene and looked at his dad. I'm definitely surprised as well. Anyways, that barrier works pretty well. I say it's an awesome first step, the young man remarked while putting his hands behind his head.
Sasuke watched as everyone was leaving before looking at Naruto. Naruto, we should get going. We have to keep up appearances, the Uchiha stated in reminder.
Yay, I know. Alright, I'll catch you later Mom, Dad, Itachi, Mr. and Mrs. Uchiha. Naruto happily replied. Sasuke rolled his eyes a bit at the comment, while Makoto crossed her arms. Calling me Mrs. Uchiha makes me feel old. You can just call me Aunt Makoto and, my husband Uncle. That sounds more fitting, Sasuke's mom stated, while Fugaku was about to make a remark against that, but that was stopped by his wife causing him to release a small sigh in defeat.
Alright, you got it, Naruto happily replied and waved before they started heading off.
Oh, I know you'll be sleeping in a room full of girls, so you better not make me a grandmother early Naruto. You hear me, Kushina teasingly replied, causing her son to have a noticeable blush upon his cheeks, and Sasuke to smirk. Same goes for you, Sasuke, Makoto commented, resulting in Sasuke to groan in annoyance with an ever so small blush upon his face, while Naruto was laughing. Later that night, all the new students were in the ballroom as well as their night clothes. Ruby, whom was wearing pajamas, consist of a black tank top with a heart-shaped Beowulf design on the chest and white long pants with pink rose decorations as well as a black sleeping mask with red triangle-shaped eyes, was currently writing in her journal. She was interrupted when Yang, who was wearing an orange tank top with her flame emblem on the front, and brown boy shorts, plopped down beside her. It's like a big slumber party, the blonde young woman happily stated while resting her head on her hand. I don't think Dad would approve of all the boys though, Ruby remarked while trying to focus to write. I know I do, grr, the violet-eyed girl commented with a perverted growl and smile, although gave a disappointed look at John, who was wearing full-body pajamas with bunny slippers. What's that? She asked, directing her attention back to her little sister. A letter to the gang back at Signal. I promised to tell them all about Beacon and how things are going, Ruby explained. Ah, that's so cute. Yang teased before being hit in the face with a pillow. Shut up. I didn't get to take my friends with me to school. It's weird not knowing anyone here. The silver-eyed girl remarked.
What about John? He's nice. There you go, plus one friend. That's 100% increase. Oh, and what about that Naruto kid? I thought he was your friend as well, Yang asked.
I didn't really talk to Naruto, so that doesn't really count. I'm also pretty sure Weiss counts as a negative friend. Back to zero, Ruby somberly stated. There's no such thing as negative friends. You just made one friend, one acquaintance, and one enemy. The older sister optimistically said before being hit in the face with a pillow again. Look, it's only been one day. Trust me, you've got friends all around you. You just haven't met them yet. Yang finished in a serious manner as she removed the pillow from her face.
The two heard a match being lit, which caught their attention. Ruby sat up as she looked from the source of light, seeing Blake, who was currently reading a book. Her sleepwear appeared to be a modified black yukata of some kind.
That girl, Ruby absently stated. You know her? Yang asked. Not really. She saw what happened this morning, but left before I could say anything. The younger sister explained. Well, now's your chance, Yang remarked. Wait, what are you doing? Ruby exclaimed as she was being dragged off by her sister, and was making grunting noises. Hello, the violet-eyed girl said in a sing-song voice. I believe you two may know each other. She finished. Blake slowly lowered her book after hearing Ruby's noises. Aren't you that girl that exploded? The yellow-eyed girl asked. Yeah, my name's Ruby. The redhead said, while offering her hand, but took it back when Blake didn't shake it. But you can just call me Crater. Actually you can just call me Ruby. She embarrassingly finished. Okay, Blake simply stated as she continued to read her book. What are you doing? Yang whispered to Ruby. I don't know, help me. The younger sister replied back as she then put a smile on her face. So what's your name? The blonde-haired young woman asked. Blake let out a heavy sigh from the distraction. Blake, she replied in a somewhat annoyed tone. Well, Blake, I'm Yang, Ruby's older sister. I like your bow, Yang said, trying to make conversation.
Thanks, Blake irritatingly replied. It goes great with your pajamas, the violet-eyed remarked.
Reet, the raven-haired girl sarcastically replied. Nice night, don't you think? Yang continued, while Ruby nervously laughed a bit. Yes, it's lovely, almost as lovely as this book, that I will continue to read, as soon as you leave. Blake stated while looking back at her book. Yay, this girl's a lost cause. Ruby's older sister remarked. What's it about? The young girl asked. Blake replied, confused a bit. Your book, does it have a name? Ruby questioned. Well, it's about a man with two souls, each fighting control over his body. The black-haired girl remarked. Oh yay, that's real lovely, Yang said in an unsure manner. I love books. Yang used to read to me every night before bed. Stories of heroes and monsters. They're one of the reasons I want to be a huntress, Ruby honestly expressed. And why is that? Hoping you'll live happily after, Blake amusingly asked. Well, I'm hoping we all will. As a girl, I wanted to be just like those heroes in the books. Someone who fought for what was right, and who protected people who could protect themselves. The red-headed girl commented. That's very ambitious for a child, Blake started with a small smile on her face. Unfortunately, the real world isn't the same as a fairy tale. She finished with a small frown.
Well, that's why we're here, to make it better, Ruby retorted.
I'm so proud of my baby sister, Yang teasingly replied while making silly noises, and picking up Ruby in a hug. Cut it out, Yang's little sister exclaimed before throwing a punch at Yang's face, causing to the two playfully fight. Blake laughed lightly. Well, Ruby, Yang, it's a pleasure too. She stopped as she was interrupted. What in the world is going on over here? Don't you realize some of us are trying to sleep? Weiss, whom was wearing a faded bluish sleeping gown with short sleeves and white trimmings, annoyingly said as she walked up. Oh, not you again, Yang and Weiss exclaimed at the same time. Shish, guys, she's right, people are trying to sleep, Ruby commented, trying to defuse the situation. Oh, now you're on my side, Weiss sarcastically said, while Blake rolled her eyes and closed her book before reaching for the candles. "I was always on your side," the redhead remarked. "Yay, what's your problem with my sister? She's only trying to be nice," Yang commented in defense to her sister. "She's a hazard to my health," the heiress exclaimed as Blake blew out the candles.
Sasuke was the first one to wake up at the crack of dawn, and had just finished putting the last of his gear together.
He rolled up the little mat they were given to sleep on, and left it next to his snoring blonde friend. The Uchiha slightly rolled his eyes a bit, seeing as he was surprised anyone, including him, was able to get some shut-eye with the loud noise. Sasuke thought about waking up Naruto, but decided against it, seeing as Itachi and he were to meet and go hunting with bows today. He expected it to take a good portion of the day up, especially considering that he was more than likely a little rusty in using a bow. Sasuke wouldn't admit it to anyone, but it was a way for him to let loose a little bit and clear his thoughts. The raven-eyed teen was about to leave, but knew that Naruto would go on a manhunt if he didn't give him some form of notice. Sasuke spotted Ruby cuddling a circular pillow that had some weird-looking animal theme to it as he came up with an idea. The young teen quietly made his way through the crowd of sleeping kids until he reached the red-headed girl. Sasuke proceeded to give her a less than gentle nudge with his foot to wake her up. Ruby stirred a little bit before stretching and releasing a yawn. 10 more minutes, Yang," she stated in a drowsy manner, before her eyes widened a bit and jumped backwards somewhat in realization of who it was. "What do you want?" she asked in a small fearful manner, since Sasuke was giving her blank look, yet held some coldness to it. "Let that idiot know not to bug me, and that I'll be gone most of the day," Sasuke explained as he gestured towards Naruto. Why me though?" the teen girl asked. "Just do it," Sasuke commanded before walking off. Yang rubbed her eyes a bit and turned towards her sister after hearing the small commotion. "Isn't he just a basket of sunshine?" she grouchily commented before going back to sleep. Ruby titled her head a bit in confusion, but ended up going back to bed a few minutes later. She figured it was best not to make a big scene out of this, and tick off a lot of people by waking them up. Sasuke walked past the few staff members that were already up, and ignored the strange looks they gave him for being up early. Upon arriving at his parents' house, the young man noticed Itachi, whom now donned a gray shirt under a black trench coat, which had the Uchiha symbol on the back. He also had on dark blue pants, black shinobi sandals, and a tattered red scarf around his neck. The elder brother looked up when he felt Sasuke's presence. "You're a little late, Sasuke," he commented as he tossed his younger brother a bow and quiver, which Sasuke caught with ease. "I had to leave a message with someone," Sasuke replied as he strapped the quiver to his back and slung the bow over his back. "Where will be hunting?" he asked. Itachi finished putting his gear on him before looking at Sasuke. "Emerald Forest, Professor Ozpin has allowed us to hunt there," Itachi answered as he walked past Sasuke, giving him a silent signal to follow. The two brothers ended up walking towards the docks in silence as they enjoyed the peace of the morning. When they arrived at the location, a bullhead was already waiting for them with a pilot as well. The pilot gave a small nod of acknowledgement before getting into the pilot seat and starting up the aircraft. Itachi gestured for Sasuke to get on the vehicle as he got on himself. The younger Uchiha walked onto the bullhead and sat in a seat as the vehicle began to take off. Inside Naruto's mind, Naruto was looking around in every direction, but all he could see was darkness. A small flicker of light appeared right behind him, automatically catching his attention. He turned around, seeing a light in the distance. The young man began walking towards the mysterious light. As he neared it, Naruto held his hand out in an attempt to touch the light that was drawing him in. Legends, stories scattered through time. Mankind has grown quite fond for accounting the exploits of heroes and villains, forgetting so easily that we are remnants, byproducts, of a forgotten past. A mysterious woman's voice spoke as the light disappeared, causing Naruto to stop and look around for the source of the voice. Naruto donned a look of fear for a split second as he turned around, immediately getting in a fighting stance. A pair of glowing yellow-orange eyes appeared, looking straight at Naruto. This triggered his memories from the night he was in the town getting new items. It was from the girl that he, Sasuke, Ruby, and Glinda tried to attack, but she managed to stop him. Cinder's silhouette could now be made out along with her glowing eyes, and Naruto was about to charge at the woman once again, but stopped as more eyes appeared around him. Man, born from dust, was strong, wise, and resourceful, but he was born into an unforgiving world. An inevitable darkness, creatures of darkness, the creatures of Grimm set their sights on Ma and all his creations. These forces clashed, and it seemed the darkness was intent on returning man's brief existence to the void. Some of the other voices started joining in as their silhouette could be made out, which caused Naruto go into a defensive mode. However, even the smallest spark of hope is enough to ignite change, and in time man's passion, resourcefulness, and ingenuity led them to the tools that would help even the odds. This power was appropriately named Dust. Nature's wrath in hand, man lit their way through the darkness, and in the shadow's absence came strength, civilization, and most importantly life. But even the most brilliant lights eventually flicker and die, and when they are gone, darkness will return. Every single voice continued as all their silhouettes appeared, and it was obvious Naruto was starting to get a little worried seeing as they would technically have the advantage over him in numbers. So you may prepare your guardians, build your monuments to a so-called free world, but take heed. There will be no victory in strength. Cinder finished alone as all the other silhouettes disappeared, while Naruto glared at the woman about to charge at her, but stopped when he heard a somewhat dark chuckle that held a familiar voice to it. Yet, you'd be wise to not underestimate those that stand against you. All it takes is a little heart for those to prevail against the darkness. A gruff voice retorted as two large red eyes with slit pupils appeared behind Naruto, whom turned around towards Kurama's voice, as the woman's eyes grew in surprise from the presence of Kurama. Real world. Naruto immediately sat up as he was breathing a little heavily from the strange dream. He looked around seeing he was in the ballroom before he looked to his left. Yang was laying on her stomach with her chin on her hands with a small perverted smile that would go unnoticed by many, yet the former Jinchuriki was a different case seeing as who had taught him in the past. This caused Naruto immediately get nervous knowing that look far too easily. It probably didn't help that he was only wearing pajama pants and no shirt. "Ah hi," Naruto nervously stated to his fellow blonde.
Hello cutie. My sister asked me to relay a message to you, since she had to go talk to my uncle Kirao about something. Yang playfully joked as she sat up and crossed her legs, while looking at Naruto.
"Why your sister?" the former shinobi asked with a small blush upon his face. "Oh, I'm Ruby's older sister." Yang explained, amused by his reaction to her playfully tease. "Oh, well, what did she need to tell me?" Naruto asked, regaining his composure. Yang smiled as she tilted her head a bit. "Apparently your grouchy friend had told her to let you know that he doesn't want you to bug him. He said something about being busy most of the day. That's all he told her, which she then asked for me to tell you." The violet-eyed girl explained.
Naruto sighed with some annoyance, but gave a nod of understanding. "Thank you for letting me know. I'm Naruto Namikaze by the way," he stated as he held his hand out with a smile on his face.
Yang smiled as she shook Naruto's hand. "I'm Yang Xiaolong. It's nice to meet you Naruto," she said.
"Why do you and Ruby have different last names?" he curiously asked.
"Oh, we're technically half-sisters, but I rather say sisters, since I see her just as my sister," the young woman explained. Naruto nodded in understanding as he stood up, and stretched a bit. "Well, I better go and take a shower," the blonde teen said as he stood and collected his things to go take a shower. Emerald Forest. Sasuke took a deep breath as he strung an arrow aiming at a male deer before letting it loose. The arrow pierced the air before puncturing the skin and breaking the ribs, but wasn't a killing shot. The deer got spooked and began to take off. Yet another arrow came flying through the air and managed to hit the heart. The buck fell to the ground dead as Itachi jumped down from the tree he was perched on, followed by Sasuke. The two brothers walked over to their prey to inspect it. "You're still rusty, but you're definitely getting better again," Itachi said as he used some ninja wire to string up their trophy in order to skin and clean it with a knife. Sasuke rolled his eyes a bit as he began collecting wood and the other things to cook the dead animal. "Well, at least I didn't hit the creature's stomach," he retorted.
Itachi just smirked slightly as he continued what he was doing.
Sasuke collected everything they needed a few minutes later and started a decent fire. The young Uchiha sat down on the ground close to the fire as he watched the flames flicker. Itachi brought over some meat and set it to where it would cook over time, but not burn. He figured he'd place the rest of the carcass somewhere else, so other carnivores could eat the remaining food. The elder Uchiha leaned against a tree while watching the meat cook. You almost lost to Naruto last night. I think the only thing that saved you was your experience in wielding a blade. Itachi stated.
Sasuke's gaze stayed on the fire for a second before moving to Itachi. I shouldn't have been surprised at his skill in learning new things. I guess I must have misjudged it considering before he'd use shadow clones to help him. He doesn't have that now, yet he's still able to come up with deceitful tactics. Sasuke commented with some annoyance in his voice, mainly from his competitiveness with Naruto.
Yes, I'm sure he is a good rival to help push you to get stronger and vice versa. Itachi said as he took a seat. Are you prepared for this world, Sasuke? The elder brother asked in a calm and serious manner. Sasuke was a little taken back from the question as he looked at his brother for a couple of minutes. I'm not entirely sure. We didn't come to this world to just live in peace. We were sent here to help, which leads me to believe that something is coming. I guess I have to find my own path once again, but I'm not sure if I really deserve it, Sasuke commented, letting his guard down, since it was his brother. Itachi stayed silent as his little brother spoke his mind. You have to find that answer out for yourself, Sasuke. Itachi said in a sincere manner. As for something coming, yes there is. I can feel it in the air, but I don't know when it will happen or how it will even compare to the past war you were just in. You should know that each war is different, and they all come with their own tests. The young man advised as he looked back at their food.
The two stayed silent for a long while after their little talk as they let the food cook and listened to the sounds of the forest.
Sasuke tensed up and immediately placed his hand on his blade, while Itachi did the same with the simple katana he borrowed from his father.
They heard a few low growls coming from the bushes surrounding them. A creature lunged from the bushes heading towards Sasuke, but he rolled back to dodge the attack as Itachi stood up as well. The bushes rustled some more as the rest of the Beowulfs came out slowly. It was a very small pack composed of 4 Grimm, which meant it might have been like a scouting party or something along those lines.
Sasuke slowly unsheathed his sword and got in his normal fighting style as his brother did the same. One of the Beowulfs howled, causing the others to charge at their intended targets. Itachi stood still till the last second before dodging a swipe from one of the creatures. The second one attempted to lunge at him, but he ducked and kicked up in its abdomen, sending it up in the air. He proceeded to block an attack from the first one's claw. Itachi calmly eyed the creature as it attempted to use its strength and push Itachi back. The elder Uchiha jumped back just as the second Grimm landed on top of the first one, causing the two to end up in a small pile.
The other 2 Grimm focused on Sasuke circled around the younger brother.
He shifted his position in order to keep an eye on both of them. One of the Grimm blitzed towards Sasuke and began slashing with his claws, but Sasuke used his expert swordsmanship to deflect the attacks. The third one took the opportunity to attack from behind, but Sasuke anticipated this as he moved his head to the side, causing a claw to fly past his head. Sasuke grabbed onto the arm, and flung the fourth Beowulf over him as the third one dodged to the side to avoid being hit. Sasuke waited for it to attack, but the creature waited for his partner to recover. Itachi jumped back from a lunge that came from the first creature of darkness and ducked under a swipe before punching it in the chest. He immediately followed up by slashing at the creature, which dodged some of the attacks, yet a good amount cut into it. Itachi back-flipped as the second Grimm attacked from behind. He straightened himself in the air and twisted his body to plunge his blade into the Beowulf's back and brought it down, effectively killing it by nearly splitting it in half. The remaining Beowulf charged at Itachi and attacked with more rage. Itachi attempted to deflect an attack, but the new strength caught him a little off guard as he was slightly stunned by it. He recovered quickly and spun around a swipe before shoving his blade into the Beowulf's skull, while his back was towards the creature, ending its life. Sasuke switched his weapon to a reverse style in order to deflect attacks a little easier. The two creatures took a more aggressive approach as they attacked him at the same time, causing Sasuke to stay on the defensive. He'd retaliate with a punch, kick, or slash from his weapon when given the chance, but the creatures kept on pressuring him.
Sasuke managed to get a small claw mark across his cheek, but it had begun healing already.
The grim that was behind him was kicked in the chest, causing it to stumble back a bit.
It retaliated by lunging at Sasuke, which was what he wanted to happen.
The younger brother sidestepped to dodge the lunge. This caused the Beowulf to embed its claws into its partner's chest area. Sasuke immediately followed up by bringing his weapon around and aimed to plunge it through both of their heads. The white plating managed to put up a resistance, causing Sasuke to show slight frustration. Lightning then sparked around him slight and went into his blade before it pierced through both of the Grimm's head with ease. Sasuke pulled his weapon out with a bit of surprise as the slight traces of lightning disappeared. Itachi walked over with his weapon already sheathed with slight amusement at what just happened. The younger brother looked at his free hand for a second before sheathing his weapon once again. He looked down at the dead Grimm before looking at his older brother, whom had obviously realized what had happened. It would seem your aura has developed even further. I would go as far to say that was a semblance we just saw. Itachi commented. Sasuke looked at the creatures once more before looking at his brother. I assume you're correct. I guess I have control over lightning to a degree in this world. The raven-haired teen observed.
Itachi gestured to the meat that had been cooking. It had managed to go unscathed from the ambush. Sasuke smirked ever so slightly as he sat back down and propped a leg up. Itachi handed him half of what was cooked before getting the other half for himself and sitting down. The two brothers then sat in silence as they began to eat from their catch.
Beacon Academy. Naruto and Yang were walking next to each other wearing their regular attire. Naruto had offered for the young woman to join him, seeing as he nothing else better to do. She agreed, albeit with somewhat of a playful predatory look for less than a split second, and they were currently just heading towards the cafeteria to get something to eat. The two had been talking and getting to know each other a bit along the way. The former shinobi spotted Weiss and vice versa, causing the two to glare at each other before Yang snapped her fingers at Naruto. What? Don't tell me you have a secret infatuation for Snow Angel over there. Yang teasingly commented. Naruto just turned to the young woman with a small glare. Yay, I wouldn't go as far as to say that. I can't really stand stuck-up people. It ticks me off, to be honest. The young man replied with annoyance in his voice as they both got food. Yang looked around the place and noticed John sitting by himself. Hey John, can we join you? The violet girl asked as both she and Naruto walked over to him. John jumped a little and turned to Yang with some surprise. Yeah, sure, that's fine. He replied with slight nervousness.
Naruto sat down across from the two before looking at the other male. Hey, I'm Naruto Namikaze. It's nice to meet you, John. The former shinobi said in a friendly manner.
I'm John Ark. Hey wait, you're the guy that had the sparring match the other day with the black-haired guy, right? John curiously asked.
Yep, that was me fighting my friend Sasuke. It's too bad that he won though. Naruto replied with slight annoyance laced in his voice.
That was a pretty awesome match. I was curious, how were you two able to fight on the wall like that? I've never seen something like that before. It was awesome, Yang exclaimed excitedly.
Naruto laughed a little nervously as he rubbed the back of his head, thinking of a way to explain it. Well, where I come from, we're able to manipulate the aura in our body to pull small feats like that. I would go as far as to say we could stand on water. I don't know how to exactly explain how it's done, considering it's very complicated for me to explain things like that. He explained, hoping that would suffice, seeing as that's all he could really come up with from what he was told.
That's a pretty interesting trick that you can do. I don't suppose you could teach it to us, huh? John asked in hope. Sorry, I don't know if you'd be able to do it, plus not sure if I could teach you properly even if you could. The former Jinchuriki replied as he continued to eat. Well, that's a bummer, but who knows, maybe one day we could learn. Yang commented. Naruto was about to reply when Cardin Winchester, whom had burnt orange hair that is combed backwards with a slight peak at the front, and indigo eyes while donning a silver-gray armor with gold-trimmed sporting bird with its wings outstretched. Underneath the armor was a black shirt with red trimmings and black pants with a red belt tied around his waist, walked past John and knocked into him a little bit. Hey, aren't you going to apologize for that? Naruto said to the tall guy, although all he get in response was a smirk as he continued walking. I have a feeling that guy is going to be a problem later on. The young Namikaze commented out loud with annoyance. Outside amphitheater, Sasuke just arrived back at his parents' house with Itachi. The two put the archery equipment up before Sasuke headed off. It was getting close to sunset, and he figured it would be best to head back to the ballroom at this time. The raven-haired teen put his hands in his pockets as he walked down the path to the academy. Sasuke stopped when he heard his name being called, and he turned around to look at the source of the voice. "Sasuke, I didn't think you'd be here," Naruto commented as he walked up to his rival and friend. "I'm guessing you just came from home, since this is the path that also leads to my parents' home," the blonde stated. Sasuke gave a small nod and turned around as he began walking once again, but followed by Naruto this time. "So what were you up to this whole time?" Naruto questioned. Sasuke just rolled his eyes a bit. "That's none of your business," he replied simply. "Geez, you're such a downer, Sasuke. Just trying to make some conversation, ya know," Naruto said, giving his friend a small glare. Sasuke just shrugged as the two continued walking in silence. Naruto looked up at the sky, staring at the moon as he remembered the dream he had this morning. It bugged him in the back of his mind the full day. He had originally been planning on talking with his parents in the morning, but didn't want to be rude to Yang, so he held it off for a bit. After hanging out with Yang and John for a while, he had decided to talk with his family. It was best he asked as soon as possible anyways before he forgot something that happened. Flashback. "Hey guys, I gotta head out. I have some things I need to discuss with my parents. I'll catch you both later, and it was nice meeting the two of you," Naruto said as he got up from a bench in the courtyard they were currently located at. "See y'all later," John and Yang responded, only for Ruby to walk up to the small group. "Ruby, where have you been?" Yang asked her sister. Ruby tilted her head a bit. "I hung out with Uncle Kiro for a while. He needed my help with some things, so I agreed." "Did I miss anything?" she asked curiously. "I was just heading out actually. I have a few things to do myself. Sorry, maybe we can talk later, Ruby, but it's kinda important," Naruto said in an apologetic tone. Ruby was a little confused as to what was going on, but waved by before looking at her older sister and John. "You two hung out with Naruto all day?" she asked, confused at what went on.
"Yup," Yang replied with a smile. Naruto got onto the path that led to his house.
It was already afternoon, and he didn't know how long it would take to explain things. His house soon came into view within a few minutes, and Naruto smiled a bit seeing his mother cleaning dishes through the window. It seemed that both his parents finished eating. Kushina looked up and noticed Naruto, which caused her to smile and wave at him. The young Namikaze walked into the house and headed towards the dining area where his father was reading the paper. "Hey Mom and Dad," Naruto commented with a smile as he sat down. Minato put the paper down, and looked at his son with a small smile. "Hey son, I didn't expect you to be stopping by today. I thought that you'd be hanging around the academy," the older male explained as the sink was turned off, and Kushina came walking out of the kitchen wiping her hands on her apron before sitting down next to her husband. "Everything okay, honey?" Kushina asked her only child. Naruto sighed a bit seeing as there was no getting past his parents, but that also made him smile a bit. "Yay, I didn't originally plan on stopping by, but I needed to talk to you two about something," he stated in a more serious tone. Minato raised an eyebrow at Naruto's seriousness, which from what he learned was usually very important. "What's wrong?" he asked curiously. "Well, last night I was having this strange dream, and I was wondering if either of you two could help explain it," Naruto replied as he put his hands on the table. "Well, we can try our best, Naruto, but we can't make any promises." "What was the dream about?" Kushina questioned. "Well, I was in a pitch-black area, although I could see myself still. I was just walking aimlessly and then a small light suddenly appeared behind me. I turned around and began to head towards the light, and as I got close to it I reached out to touch it. The light suddenly vanished as this mysterious voice started talking about how this world began or something along those lines. I turned around and saw that woman that I fought the first night I was here in this world. She then began talking and more voices started appearing around me as well as their silhouette." Naruto started explained and paused for a bit, letting his parents grasp what he said so far. They all continued talking about how man and the darkness clashed, but man in the end prevailed and began to prosper. All the voices then talked about how all lights flicker out and die eventually. When all lights are gone, then darkness will return. All the voices and silhouettes disappeared save for that one woman. It then felt like she was challenging me, saying that there basically was no hope for anything. But then Kurama's voice and eyes appeared. He gave a retort to that woman, basically saying that she better not underestimate those that will stand against the darkness. That's when I woke up. What do you think it means? I thought Kurama was gone. Naruto finished as he looked at his parents. Minato had a neutral look upon his face and his hands cupped together as he went over Naruto's explanation. It was indeed a strange dream, seeing as it was a very specific one, which usually meant something. It was also weird on how Kurama appeared within Naruto's dream. He glanced at his wife and could tell she was just as confused as he was. After a few minutes, Minato let out a small sigh. Well, I can't tell you exactly what it means, but I can make some educated guesses. I'm going to guess that something big in time is going to happen. It could be this darkness that comes to attempt to destroy everything. I'm not entirely sure, since I don't know the full history of this world yet, but it seems that way. I would suggest that you and Sasuke make sure you're both ready for whatever comes. It could happen sooner than later. Now as for Kurama,
I have no idea why he'd appear within that dream. It could be just a manifestation of him in your dreams and nothing more, in an attempt to rebut what was being said. It could have also really been him helping you. You two have a bond since your birth, so it is possible he's still able to communicate with you somehow. I wouldn't know for sure, especially since the sage didn't explain everything that is to come here as well as what is possible for us, Minato said as he expressed his opinion. Naruto sighed in annoyance as he laid his head on the table for a bit. Now I'm just more confused than ever. But I guess that helps somewhat as well, the young man said as he looked at his parents. I better start heading back to the academy. It's getting late and whatnot, ya know, Naruto said with a small smile as he said his goodbyes to his parents and vice versa. Flashback end: Naruto and Sasuke had already arrived to the ballroom and changed back into their sleeping attire. Naruto was looking at the ceiling with his hands behind his hands, still thinking about the dream. Sasuke glanced at his friend and could obviously tell that something was on his mind, which wasn't needed considering Naruto needed to focus for tomorrow. There was no telling how things would turn out for the initiation, and Sasuke didn't want to be Naruto's inability for being distracted. Idiot, we got an important day tomorrow. We should be prepared, Sasuke stated simply before closing his eyes to go to bed. Naruto, whom snapped out of thought, looked at Sasuke and nodded a bit in agreement. Yay, you're right. I gotta focus on tomorrow, Naruto replied as he turned to his side and closed his eyes. Eyes started to slowly open up, and a girl with short orange hair and turquoise eyes, whom was wearing a collared black vest that ends at her waist, could be seen. Her signature symbol was located at the back. Under the vest were 2 layers of clothing, colored red and light blue respectively. She had a white sleeveless top that formed a tiny heart shape between her cleavage and collarbone, with a white detached sleeve on each arm. She wore matching fingerless gloves on each hand along with a pink skirt that started at the waist and ended mid-thigh. Her shoes were a mix of pink and white with pink laces, and displayed her symbol on their soles. She also donned some sort of armor that began in the middle of the shoulder and neck and ends by the waist. The only other accessory Nora had was an off-white bow at the back of her skirt, with ribbon extending to the skirt's bottom. "Wake up, lazy bud," Nora exclaimed to Ren, whom groaned from being woken up. The young man she was referring to had long black hair and a ponytail that ended midway down his back. There was a magenta streak on the left side of his hair. His eyes matched the colored streak in his hair. He wore a dark green, diagonally buttoned, long-sleeved tailcoat that had red on the inside, with black and gold trimming and pink cuffs. The trimming went down the right side of his torso and formed a black collar. He also donned a black undersleeve beneath the suit, and light-ton pants with black shoes. "It's morning, it's morning, it's morning, it's morning," she continued in a sing-song voice, while the black-haired teen groaned once again. "I can't believe we've been at Beacon for a full 24 hours, not that I thought we'd get kicked out or anything. I mean, you were the perfect student, and I'm me, but it's just crazy, ya know." The hyper-girl continued as Ren was brushing his teeth. "We've been friends for so long. What are the odds we'd still be together? Well, not together, not that I'm not saying you're not handsome. You are handsome, but that would just be weird, right? She stated while brushing her hair, while Ren was putting his sleeping mat up. Right, what was I thinking? But still, I hope we end up on the same team together.
Ooh, we should come up with some sort of plan to make sure we end up on the same team together. What if we bribe the headmaster? No, that won't work, he has a school, the blue-eyed girl contemplated after she slurped down the pancakes. I know, we'll have some sort of signal like a distress signal. Nora, whom was now in the locker room as well as was zipping all over the place, stated towards her childhood friend before she gasped in realization. A secret signal, so we can find each other in the forest. Can you imitate a sloth? She asked. Nora. Ren interrupted his friend as he hid his weapons, Stormflower, up his sleeves. Yes, Ren, the young woman replied. I don't sloths make a lot of noise. The magenta-eyed teen stated, causing his childhood friend to look around for a couple of seconds.
That's why it's perfect. No one will suspect we're working together, she happily commented.
Come on Nora, let's go, Ren said as he closed the door to his locker and started leaving. But not together, Nora finished as she giggled excitedly, before following the young man. I wonder what those two were so worked up about, Ruby commented after she had glanced at both Nora and Ren. Oh, who knows, Yang stated as she turned towards her younger sister and crossed her arms. So you seem awfully chipper this morning, the lilac-eyed girl said in an optimistic tone. Yep, no more awkward small talk, or getting to know you stuff. Today, I get to let my sweetheart do the talking, the silver-eyed girl happily stated while coddling Crescent Rose. Well, remember Ruby, you're not the only one going through initiation. If you wanna grow up, you're going to have to meet new people, and learn how to work together. Yang retorted as she put her hands on her hips, causing Ruby to groan in annoyance. You sound like Dodd. Okay, first of all, what does meeting people have to do with fighting? And secondly, I don't need people to help me grow up. I drink milk, Ruby stated in a matter-of-fact manner as she crossed her arms. But what about when we form teams? The elder sister questioned. Oh, two don't know, I'll just be on your team, or something, Ruby meekly commented.
My bae, you should try being on someone else's team? Yang retorted in an unsure manner, while playing with her hair.
My dearest sister Yang, are you implying that you do not wish to be on the same team as me? The short girl exclaimed towards her half-sister. What? No, of course I do. I just thought, I don't know, maybe it would help you break out of your shell. The elder sister defended. What I don't need to break out of my shell. That is absolutely. Ruby stopped as she was interrupted by John. Ridiculous. There's no way I put my gear in locker 636 yesterday. I would have remembered to count that high. Oh, why does this have to happen, Todai? John whined as he walked past Weiss and Pyrrha. Pyrrha had red hair in a waist-length ponytail along with vivid green eyes. She also has light green eyeshadow around the far, upper corners of her eyes. She was tall and fairly built compared to the other girls. Her top consists of 2 layers, which was the top layer with a light brown, strapless top split into 2 vertically with some bronze pattern, and the bottom layer is a low bronze v-neck.
Pyrrha wore an elastic, red, a lean miniskirt that ended mid-thigh, and brown cut-off sleeves on both arms. She also donned a red ankle-length drapery that appeared to be wrapped around her skirt. There was a small circular bronze plate by her right hip opposite a pouch with both connected to a belt. The plate bore her shield and spear symbol, and she wore a bronze circlet headpiece that could be seen above her ear and under her bangs. A pair of small, green, teardrop-shaped emeralds hung from her circlet on thin chains. Pyrrha also sported a large bronze gorget around her neck, and a bronze bracelet on the upper half of her left arm. She had elaborate bronze greaves that started below mid-thigh, continuing downwards into her boots. A pair of cuisses begun mid-thigh, and end slightly above her knees. She also donned a bronze bracer on top of the sleeve on her left arm. Her boots were brown with bronze trim, matching her skirt and sleeves, and reach up to mid-calf. So Pyrrha, have you given any thought to whose team you'd like to be on? I'm sure everyone must be eager to unite with such a strong, well-known individual such as yourself. Weiss complimented as she gestured towards the redhead. I'm not quite sure. I was planning on letting the chips fall where they may. Pyrrha answered honestly with her hand on her hip. Well, I was thinking maybe we could be on a team together? The white-haired girl asked.
Well, that sounds grand, the green-eyed beauty replied in a happy tone. Great, Weiss exclaimed. This will be perfect. The smartest girl in class combined with the strongest girl in class. Together we will be unstoppable. I can see it now. We'll be popular. We'll be celebrities. We'll get perfect grades. Nothing can come between us now. The young woman thought with an evil smirk upon her face, which was immediately cut off as John cut in. You know what else is great? Me, John Ark. Nice to meet you, the blonde boy replied in a somewhat smooth attempt, as he put his hands against a locker. You again, the icy blue-eyed girl replied in disgust as she crossed her arms. Nice to meet you, John, Pyrrha said optimistically as she slid in front of Weiss. Yay, John responded as he shoved Pyrrha out of the way. Sue, Weiss couldn't help but overhear your fondness of me the other day. He commented, trying to flex for the heiress.
Oh, you have got to be kidding me, she replied in annoyance.
Don't worry, no need to be embarrassed, so I've been hearing rumors about teams. I was thinking you and me would make a good one. What do you say? John asked Weiss. Actually, I think the teams are comprised of 4 students each, so. Pyrrha stated before John cut her off.
You don't say. Well, hot stuff, play your cards right, and maybe you can join up with the winning team. The blue-eyed boy stated as he also tried to impress the redhead, before Weiss got in between the two of them.
John, is it? Do you have any idea who you're talking to? Weiss questioned. Not in the slightest, no angel. John dreamily stated. This is Pyrrha, Weiss introduced. Hello again. Pyrrha greeted as she waved. Pyrrha graduated top of her class at Sanctum. The heiress explained.
Never heard of it. The oblivious boy replied. She's won the Mistral regional tournaments 4 years in a row. A new record. Weiss continued.
The what? John asked. She's on the front of every Pumpkin Pete's Marshmallow Flakes box. The white-haired girl exclaimed, while waving her arms. That's you. They only do that for star athletes and cartoon characters. John exclaimed in awe as he imaged Pyrrha, whom seemed to have a somewhat shy smile on her face, on the cereal box. Yay, it was pretty cool. Sadly, the cereal isn't very good for you, Pyrrha stated in an honest way. Sue, after hearing all of this, do you really think you're in a position to ask her to be on your team? Weiss said in annoyance. Guess not, sorry. The young man replied in depressed voice. Actually, John, I think you'd make a great leader. The redhead said in an attempt to cheer him up, as she put her hand on his shoulder. Do stop it, the blue-eyed young man replied in a gushing tone. Seriously, please stop it. This kind of behavior should not be encouraged. Weiss retorted. Sounds like Pyrrha is on board for Team John. Spots are filling up quick. Now, I'm not supposed to do this, but maybe I can pull some strings. Find a place for you. What do you say? John offered in a confident tone, while leaning in a bit towards Weiss. All right, that's a bit too close. The heiress commented as she backed up a bit. Pyrrha, a little help please. Weiss pleaded. John put his hands on his waist as he turned towards Pyrrha. A spear flew past the young man and went into his hood. This caused him to go flying back and get embedded into a locker. I'm sorry, Pyrrha apologized as the speaker came on. Would all first-year students please report to Beacon Cliff for initiation? Again, all first-year students report to Beacon Cliff immediately. The feminine voice said over the speaker. It was nice meeting you, Pyrrha said as she used her semblance to dislodge her weapon before putting it up.
Likewise, John replied before falling to the ground.
Having some trouble there, Lady Killer, Yang teasingly commented as both she and Ruby walked up to John. I don't understand. My dad said all women look for is confidence. Where did I go wrong? John groaned. Snow Angel probably wasn't the best start, Yang jokingly replied as she started walking off, while Ruby helped up the young man. Come on John, let's go, Ruby said as she helped support John. Minato's office. Naruto and Sasuke were in a room with Minato, whom was sitting at his desk. The office somewhat resembled the headmaster's office, since all of them generally looked the same. There were a couple of pictures on his desk though. One was of both Kushina and Naruto, which the two were back to back with their arms crossed, and big smiles on their face. The other one was of both the Namikaze and Uchiha families in one big group picture. It was obvious Sasuke and Fugaku didn't want to take the picture, although it was both Makoto and Kushina's idea for the photo, so there was no escaping it or else face the wrath of the two wives. Naruto and Sasuke had gotten up earlier than the rest of the group, and had gotten ready for the initiation. Minato had asked them to come to his office, since he and Professor Ozpin had to speak with them. The two teens were currently sitting in a couple of chairs across from Minato's desk. Professor Ozpin walked in a few seconds later with his mug and stood by Minato's desk. So I had some things I wanted to talk to you two about, but first Minato here tells me you have something to say, Naruto. It had to do with a dream you had. The headmaster questioned. Naruto raised an eyebrow, not knowing his father had let the headmaster know about his dream. Well yeah, I had this weird dream last night. It was a pretty detailed dream, but I'm not sure it's of anything significant. The blonde teen explained.
I wonder if this dream is what was bothering him last night. Sasuke thought to himself as he looked over to Naruto. Well, why don't you let me be the judge of that, Mr. Namikaze? Professor Ozpin commented. Naruto looked at everyone before giving a slight nod.
He then began to explain what happened in his dream. Naruto changed the part of Kurama appearing in his head a little bit by stating an old friend helped defend him. Sasuke had his suspicions on who he was talking about, but didn't voice his thoughts. It wasn't his business to ask the question, plus it seemed Naruto had a reason for not explaining who he was possibly talking about. The former Jinchuriki finished explaining his dream within a couple of minutes. Professor Ozpin took a sip from his mug as he thought for a couple of seconds.
I'll be honest with you, Naruto. I would keep that dream in mind somewhat. When things are that vivid, they usually mean something.
I want the two of you to take heed to what I'm about to tell you. I'm sure you know you both were brought to this world for a reason. Well, from your dreams, Naruto, it sounds as if the darkness will be returning. I don't know when or where, but I've been having my suspicions for a while, seeing as how things with the White Fang, and that mysterious woman that you attempted to fight your first night here. I can't be too sure, nor will I disclose this to my students. I don't want them to have to fight a war, and I'll attempt to prevent that happening to them as long as possible. Professor Ozpin explained calmly.
I want you two to be prepared for what is to come. You two have a slight edge over the other students here at Beacon Academy. Minato said towards the two. I do believe the two of you will be able to do it. The former Hokage replied honestly.
Well, I'll be honest. I don't know why we were exactly chosen to come here. I do know this. I will do everything in my power to help in any way I can. A war is something that no one should ever have to experience, much less those that are my age. We had no choice in the matter, but I think with me and Sasuke here we can help prevent this war, and if not, then we can help prepare everyone. Naruto said in a serious voice, an unwavering look his eye, while Sasuke gave a slight hesitant nod. Professor Ozpin studied the two boys for a couple of seconds. He could tell what Naruto said was true, although he also wondered if the blonde teen was prepared for another war. His eyes drifted off to Sasuke a few seconds later. It was very hard to tell what was on Sasuke's mind, but Ozpin had a feeling about something. It seemed Sasuke had a lot of skeletons in his closet that he needed to come to terms with. The headmaster couldn't really blame him though from what he was told about the two boys.
All right then, I believe you understand where I'm coming from.
Now the last thing is going to deal with your team. Like Minato said, you two have a slight edge over your other classmates. You both have experiences working as a team, and from what I could tell the two of you could basically read each other's movements when fighting. I'll explain more of what's going to happen later. At the moment, you two should head out to Beacon Cliff, and meet up with the rest of your colleagues. Professor Ozpin finished. Naruto nodded as the two of them stood up. They then left the office and made their way to Beacon Cliff. Minato watched the two of them leave before looking at Professor Ozpin. Do you really think a war will possibly end up happening? The blonde male asked his superior.
Professor Ozpin watched the two boys leave before responding. I honestly don't know, but I'm hoping it doesn't come to that. He stated in a serious manner before he started walking away to go to where the initiation was being held.
Beacon Cliff. All of the first-year students of the academy stood atop Beacon Hill. It overlooked the emerald forest with a great view. The students stood on a launch pad all lined up. The lineup started with Sasuke followed by John, Naruto, Ruby, Yang, Cardin, Ren, Nora, Russell, Pyrrha, Weiss, and the other students. For years, you have trained to become warriors, and today your abilities will be evaluated in the Emerald Forest. Professor Ozpin started with a hand behind his back, and the other holding his mug. Now, I'm sure many of you have had rumors about the assignment of teams. Well, allow us to put an end to your confusion. Each of you will be given teammates, today. Glinda stated. Wah, oh. Ruby groaned in an uneasy manner. These teammates will be with you for the rest of your time here at Beacon, so it is in your best interest to be paired with someone with whom you can work well. The headmaster continued. Oh no, Ruby quietly said. That being said, the first person you make eye contact with after landing will be your partner for the next 4 years. Ozpin stated calmly, causing Ruby's eyes to widen in an anime-type fashion. Fought, the silver-eyed girl exclaimed. See, I told you, Nora said towards Ren. After you've partnered up, make your way to the northern end of the forest. You will meet opposition along the way. Do not hesitate to destroy everything in your path, or you will die. The silver-haired man warned, causing John to gulp nervously. You will be monitored and graded for the duration of your initiation, but our instructors will not intervene. You will find an abandoned temple at the end of the path containing several relics. Each pair must choose one, and return to the top of the cliff. We will regard that item as well as your standing, and grade you appropriately. Are there any questions? The headmaster finished.
Yay, sir. John started as he raised his hand.
Good, now take your positions. Professor Ozpin said, ignoring the scrawny blonde at first, as everyone except John got ready. Sir, I got a question. The nervous teen started, while his peers were starting to get launched. So this landing, strategy thing. What is it? You're like dropping us off or something? He asked. No, you will be falling. Ozpin stated. Oh, I see, so like did you hand out parachutes first? John questioned as Nora was launched with glee. No, you will be using your own landing strategy. The older male replied. Okay. The blue-eyed teen responded in an unsure manner, while Yang winked at her sister before putting on her aviators and getting launched. So what exactly is a landing strategy? The confused teen asked. Come on John, this will be fun. There's nothing to worry about, I'm sure. Naruto excitedly exclaimed right before being launched into the air. Easy for you to say. John yelled, getting launched unexpectedly. Sasuke rolled his eyes in annoyance before getting launched himself. Professor Ozpin had a small smile on his face as he turned around, watching the first-year students fly into the air. He then took a sip from his mug before bringing it down back to its original position. The students all began changing the positions their bodies were in order to begin landing safely. Emerald Forest. Birdie. No, Ruby exclaimed as she accidentally hit a bird while flying through the air. Ruby shot a couple of rounds into the ground in order to slow her descent before flipping around. Crescent Rose was changed to its scythe form as the young girl hooked it onto a tree limb. She spun around the limb a couple of times before releasing the hold on the branch. Weiss was falling through the air before she did a front flip and created a glyph to jump off of, and continued to do so when necessary. Ren was dive bombing towards a tree before he flipped around and twisted his body in order to embed the blades of Stormflower into the trunk and spiral around the tree. He landed safely on the ground, and dusted himself off before looking around. Ren looked up in the air after hearing a boom, and saw Yang using her weapons to fly through the air. Yang continued using her gauntlets to propel her forward, letting out little shouts of joy along the way. She busted through the top of a tree, then jumped from one trunk to another before landing on the ground. Nailed it, the lilac-eyed girl stated. Pyrrha had her shield, Akoo, in front of her, while Milo, which was in her right hand, was in its sword form. She used the shield to break through 3 different trees in order to slow herself down. The redhead rolled forward as she landed on a sturdy branch, putting her shield on her back, and transforming Milo into a rifle. She looked around the area using the sight to attempt to spot any dangers. The green-eyed young woman heard John screaming, and turned towards the direction of his voice. Pyrrha spotted the young man through the iron sights, and responded by twirling her weapon around, turning it into a javelin. She used her thumb on her free hand as a point of reference, before throwing the javelin in John's general direction. "Thank you," John yelled out as the javelin embedded him into a tree. "I'm sorry," the redhead replied while waving her right hand. Naruto had a big look of excitement on his face as he flew through the air. It was obvious that everyone had gotten pretty separated from each other, which meant that it was going to be a pain to find a partner. As he neared the tree line, the blonde teen applied the right amount of aura to his feet and legs in order to strengthen their endurance. Naruto proceeded to jump from trunk to trunk of the trees in order to slow his speed down eventually. When it was slow enough, the former Jinchuriki unsheathed one of his blades, before embedding it into a tree trunk, and swinging around the handle. The weapon deep enough to where Naruto was able to stand on the hilt of his weapon and look around to see where he was. It dawned on him a couple of seconds later, that everything pretty much looked the same. Naruto sighed a bit in annoyance as he dropped towards the ground, then grabbed the hilt of his blade before using the trunk as leverage to dislodge it from the tree. He landed on a lower branch before jumping from branch to branch. Sasuke pulled out his weapon as he neared the trees.
The Uchiha flipped and twisted his body in order to begin slicing through the thick branches of the trees so he wouldn't collide with any of them.
He proceeded to land on top of a branch with ease from all the times he had jumped from tree to tree.
Sasuke sheathed his weapon before looking around the area. He wasn't sure exactly where anyone was, save for John and Pyrrha, whom had both yelled out towards each other. Sasuke proceeded to start jumping from branch to branch, figuring he'd run into Naruto sooner or later, although made a mental note to not make eye contact with anyone. Sasuke looked to his right as he saw Ruby land on the ground, then rolling to spread the shock throughout her body, before she began running. After a second of debating, Sasuke decided to follow the silver-eyed girl, whom was very fast to his surprise. He figured, knowing his blonde idiotic friend, he'd eventually run into Naruto by just following the girl. Gotta find Yang. Gotta find Yang. Gotta find Yang.
Gotta find, Ruby thought as she sped through the forest. Yang, Yang, the silver-eyed girl called out in an attempt to grab the attention of her sister.
Oh, this is bad. This is really bad. Oh, what if I can't find her?
What if someone finds her first? The red-hooded thought in a worried tone. Well, there's always John. He's nice. He's funny. I don't think he's very good in a fight though.
Oh, what about Blake? So mysterious, so calm, plus she likes books. Oh, then again I'm not sure I'd be able to hold a conversation with her. Wait. There's Naruto, he seems very friendly, plus he knows how to fight from what that match showed, although his friend kinda scares me. Ruby thought with a small shiver, remembering how Sasuke was when he woke her up. Okay, who else do I know in this school? There's Yang, John, Blake, Naruto. AAANNNNNNDDD. She stopped as she looked up and came to a skidding halt, before looking up and making eye contact with Weiss. The two girls looked at each other for a couple of seconds, although the heiress turned around and began to walk off. Wait. Where are you going? We're supposed to be teammates, Ruby commented in a dejected manner as she kicked the ground. Ow, Weiss stated as she got caught in the brush a little bit. The young heiress let out a sigh, as she moved through the vines and brush. She dusted herself off a bit, although looked up as she heard some mumbling coming from above her. Ah, come one stupid, John mumbled as he attempted to dislodge the javelin from his hood in order to free himself. John noticed Weiss was below him, and laughed a little nervously while waving at her. The white-haired girl immediately turned around, and began walking the other way, ignoring the blonde-haired boy altogether. John frowned a bit, and looked down in disappointment as he let out a groan. Weiss walked up towards Ruby with an annoyed expression on her face. By no means does this make us friends, Weiss stated as she grabbed Ruby by her hood, and began dragging her. You came back, Ruby shouted in glee, while pumping her fist in happiness.
Hey wait, come back, who's gonna get me down from here? John yelled out to the two girls before looking down. John, do you have any spots left on your team? Pyrrha asked in a teasing manner, while crossing her arms. Very funny, the young man replied as he crossed his arms, and looked away, before looking back at Pyrrha with a small smile on his face. Sasuke had stayed hidden in the tree when he saw Weiss walk away from John. The young Uchiha rolled his eyes a bit, and ignored the blonde boy. It seemed to him that either all blondes were idiots, or this one was especially helpless. Sasuke didn't even bother to help the team, especially since a red-headed girl came out to help him anyways. The onyx-eyed team continued to follow Ruby and Weiss in silence, although as he was following them he noticed a group of shadows that seemed to be doing the same, albeit keeping their distance. Sasuke narrowed his eyes a bit as he waited to see what would happen. "What's the hurry?" Ruby questioned as she followed behind Weiss.
"I will not let my mission be delayed because you're so slow. I swear if I get a bad grade, Becca." "What the?" Weiss exclaimed as Ruby was suddenly in front of her. "I'm not slow, see. You don't have to worry about me," the silver-eyed girl proudly stated, while pawing with her hands.
"When did?" the heiress tried to ask, but was interrupted by the girl again. "Weiss, just because I don't exactly know how to deal with people doesn't mean I don't know how to deal with monsters," the red-hooded girl stated as she put an arm around Weiss' shoulders. "You're about to see a whole different side to me today, Weiss, and after it's all over you're going to be like, wow, that Ruby girl is really cool, and I wanna be your friend," Ruby explained in a confident manner before rushing off to the distance.
"You may be fast, but you still excel at wasting time," Weiss retorted to the quirky girl. "Ruby?" the heiress called out after hearing the bushes rustle a bit. "Ruby?" the silver-eyed girl asked in an unsure tone, as red eyes started appearing around her, causing Weiss to panic a little before she turned around seeing a Beowulf come out of the bushes. "Ruby?" Weiss exclaimed as the Grim roared, while Sasuke unsheathed his blade preparing to intervene if it was needed.
The end. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.